Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. You're tuned into Information Radio now. This is the morning show live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube on CBC. My name is Marcy Marcusa, and I'll be sitting in with you till 8:37 this morning. Let's have a look at the weather. It's -9. Abby and I are thinking that it's probably going to be there most of the day. That's pretty much what they're saying our temperature will be. Yesterday, we had one of those days where the temperature didn't move much. Today, though, not as much snow. So 30% chance of some more light snow in Winnipeg and a mainly cloudy day ahead. If you need us on the drive, hopefully it'll be less slick on those highways than yesterday. We checked. There's no closures right now this morning, but you can check 511, and if you need us, 788-3093. So who is us? Let's say good morning to the team. Abby Adeyemi, I already mentioned, is behind the controls of the show, is also going to be directing and covering weather and running around. I hope you got your sneakers on today, Abby. Abby usually has the sneakers on. Really good ones, too. Good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who is behind the controls of YouTube, giving us a good morning wave wherever you're watching the show. All right, let's get to Heather Wells. Lots going on in news, to say the least. She's here with our headlines at 2 minutes to 6 o'clock. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba woman is trying to cope with phantom pain after having her right leg amputated above the knee. We told you about this story last week. 61-year-old Roseanne Milburn's health deteriorated after spending days in hospital with an open wound following knee replacement surgery. That led to an infection and the amputation on Friday. Milburn doesn't know how much longer she'll have to be in hospital. Canada Post employees head back to work today after being ordered to return. Some Winnipeg businesses say they are relieved. They say they've been struggling with deliveries. The post office says it's going to take some time to clear the backlog of packages. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So we have so much going on today. First of all, we are going to talk politics because yesterday, one of the most historic days we've seen in this country, started really at the end of the, late morning here in Winnipeg. Before we were off the air yesterday, we learned Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, leaving her ministerial post. Well, being told to leave and then saying she's leaving cabinet altogether. So then this meeting yesterday, not a lot said. Trudeau speaking last night at a dinner. You're going to hear more on World Report. We're going to look at this through a Manitoba lens. So stay tuned for that conversation on the show.
On Q with Tom Power.
With a career as big as hers, no wonder Cher is splitting her memoir into 2 books. Cher will be here to tell you about her early days in music and open up about the difficult relationship she had with her musical partner and ex-husband, the late Sonny Bono. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau cannot avoid what is coming today. With Chrystia Freeland's bombshell resignation, MPs in his own party are calling for him to step down. Trudeau left caucus last night promising he would think about what they had to say. The Canadian public also has questions he can't dodge for long. As Rafi Boudjikanian tells us, today is the last day of the fall sitting of Parliament.
Le très honorable Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau still finding applause, if not with everyone in his caucus, at least among the party faithful gathered at a fundraiser Monday night.
It's obviously been an eventful day.
The Prime Minister meeting them after hearing from some of his own MPs asking for him to step down.
It is the absolute privilege of my life to serve as your Prime Minister.
Those calls from parliamentarians on the heels of an abrupt resignation by his finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, who published a letter rebuking Trudeau over their differences on the best financial path forward for Canada, just hours before she'd been set to deliver a fall economic statement, saying costly political gimmicks won't help at a time the country is facing incoming U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threat. Trudeau quickly named veteran cabinet member Dominic LeBlanc to finance as a replacement.
The government continues to focus on the work that Canadians want us to focus on.
But the political opposition is seizing on the chaos, including Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
When will we have a carbon tax elected?
And NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign.
Singh's party has been the last one to support the Liberals in this minority parliament, now warning it won't do that anymore if MPs return from their holiday break with Trudeau still at the helm next February or March. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
The federal Liberals were dealt another blow overnight. They lost the by-election in the BC riding of Cloverdale-Langley City to the Conservatives. This is the third seat the governing Liberals have lost in a by-election this year. The Conservative candidate declined to speak to reporters. The drama on Parliament Hill has been drawing attention away from the fall economic statement and the government's ballooning deficit. Now that experts have had some time to pore over the details, Karina Roman tells us what they think.
Government House Leader Karina Gould quietly tables the fiscal update in the House of Commons. No fanfare, no long speech detailing what's in the document, such as the deficit for the last fiscal year, which is almost $62 billion, much higher than the $40 billion target that Chrystia Freeland set. That's mainly due to one-time costs, such as Indigenous lawsuit settlements and leftover COVID liabilities. And it's a deficit that is still on target for the size of the economy. But
the problem is when you set a target, it kind of matters that you reach it. You're setting expectations.
Sahir Khan with Ottawa University's School of Fiscal Studies and Democracy says meeting expectations is key to keeping confidence in the economy and in the government. There is $24 billion worth of new spending in the update, the $1.6 billion GST holiday and $1.3 billion to secure the border. But the bulk of new spending is tax incentives for businesses, a good move, according to economist Armin Yalnizan.
Giving them a prompt to invest in Canada is what we all wanted to see.
Rather than fleeing to the U.S., which is what Donald Trump wants with his 25% tariff threat. Now, what's not in the update? No acceleration of military spending, and those controversial $250 rebate checks, as predicted, also absent. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
Игорь Кириллов и его помощник. Произошедшее квалифицировано как теракт.
A member of Russia's investigative committee confirms the death of a senior general in Moscow. A bomb planted in an electric scooter was triggered outside a residential building earlier today. Officials say Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov and his assistant were killed. Kirillov was the head of Russia's nuclear defense forces. Several countries had issued sanctions against him, including Canada. There are reports that Ukraine's security services was behind the assassination. Yesterday, that same agency charged Kirillov with war crimes. It says he was behind the use of chemical weapons in Russia's war against Ukraine. The head of Syria's opposition alliance is laying out his plan for the country's security. Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, whose real name is Ahmed al-Shara, says rebel forces will be disbanded and trained to join the ranks of the defense ministry. It's been more than a week since President Bashar al-Assad was overthrown. Many Syrians are wondering what comes next. Our senior international correspondent, Margaret Evans, reports.
Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, the Islamist leader of the rebel alliance, has pledged to protect all of Syria's religious and ethnic groups, including Alawites, the minority sect to which the deposed president Bashar al-Assad belongs. Al-Jalani has assigned envoys or spoken himself to minority groups, telling them they've nothing to fear. Tal al-Shamis, assistant pastor at an evangelical church in Damascus, says parish leaders were invited to a meeting. They were told all the Christians could follow their religion freely, he says, that there would be no change. Not everyone is convinced. Many Shia Muslims have or are trying to flee Syria out of fear of persecution. Members of the Alawite community who haven't already fled are laying very low, fearing they'll be associated with al-Assad's brutal rule. Majid Mokhaiber sent his own sons out of Damascus to the Alawite stronghold of Tartus. He calls it a precaution. For years, people lived in fear that if this government fell, they would be in danger. I don't believe that, he says. I think there are a few cases, but that the Syrian people are rebuilding themselves and will bring sects together. Al-Jalani's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a former al-Qaeda affiliate, is listed as a terrorist group by several foreign governments, including Canada. Removing it from the list, say many, will depend on whether or not al-Jilani keeps his pledges. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Damascus.
Vanuatu is dealing with widespread destruction from a magnitude 7.3 earthquake just off its coast overnight. Here is Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong.
I say to the people of Vanuatu, you are family and Australia is here to help.
Communication lines are still down, so the extent of the damage in Vanuatu is unclear. Early reports suggest there are multiple collapsed buildings and injured people. Bumper-to-bumper traffic in New Delhi is worse under smog that has been constant for weeks. India's government is tightening restrictions. The air quality is at severe levels again. In New Delhi Tuesday morning, the air quality index reached 424 on a scale of 500. Christmas is just over a week away, but it doesn't feel like it in many parts of the country. Temperatures are above freezing. Canadians are not getting the conditions for the activities some people enjoy at this time of year. A new report says climate change is to blame. Anand Ram has more.
That's Joel Campbell's boot depressing into soft, muddy soil in a West End Toronto park. Not ideal, given he's setting up an ice rink, something he's done here every year for the last decade.
And on a day like today, I mean, it's warm. It's not really a good day to flood.
No, not a good day to flood today, but this is starting to seem a little more typical.
He's talking about the lack of freezing cold, and a new analysis from the nonprofit Climate Central says across Canada, climate change has made above zero days in winter far more common. Christina Dahl is the group's vice president of science.
Our economies depend on having freezing temperatures. Our ecosystems depend on having freezing temperatures. And in many parts of the world, our water supplies depend on it as well.
The analysis found that from 2014 to last year, dozens of Canadian towns and cities have added a week's worth of above zero temperatures to their winter. Montreal and Calgary among them. In Toronto, it's more, almost 2 weeks. And in Metro Vancouver, the last decade has seen almost 3 whole weeks of days above zero during winter. To be clear, the weather may still give us scenes of kids tobogganing down snowy hills, but as the climate warms from humans burning fossil fuels, experts say the chances of warmer, wetter winters are higher. For Campbell, even if the days are few and far between, it's still worth setting up this rink.
If we can get it open for even part of the holidays, is just a huge benefit for the whole neighborhood.
After all, it's where he taught his 3 daughters how to skate. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're live on downtown. We're live, and you're listening live to the show from downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM. Thanks for being here. Weather not as eventful as yesterday. We're not going to get as much snow, but we already do have some bus cancellations. We'll tell you about those in just a moment. This hour, in addition on the show, a woman who lives in Island Lakes neighborhood in Winnipeg has been operating a free library, but is now also taking Santa letters from kids. We're going to hear more about that, so stay tuned. Also, this hour on the program, Canada Post is finally set to resume operations today, as you know. We're going to hear more, though, from a business expert about what this actually means. Because remember that the issues between Canada Post and the union are certainly not settled. So where do we go from here? And then at 10 to 7, let's talk politics after one of the most historic days in this country. Everything unfolding yesterday with Chrystia Freeland and then with the caucus meeting and a little detail. People were poised thinking, would the Prime Minister actually resign yesterday? He did not. So we'll get some of your comments on. We asked for your Manitoba perspective on this, and we'll have more analysis of that and where that story might go from here. So that's coming up just before 7. Right now, Heather Wells joins us with news headlines from CBC Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba family alleges a woman stole $170,000 from their dead aunt. Donna Manning was 82 when she died in 2015. Her friend, Kathy Penner, was named executor of the estate. But when the family finally got access to Donna's account, they allege Penner had spent tens of thousands of dollars of their aunt's money and charged it to the estate. We're going to hear this story from our I-team. And Manitoba's PC opposition says it is worried the projected deficit in this province is on the rise while the government faces an economic threat from the United States. The NDP government has announced a projected deficit is $1.3 billion. We'll hear some details in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Feels like 1988. Like sometimes when we're listening to the stories about inflation and about what's happening politically and about the mobilization of the provinces and decentralization of federal government, sort of that ideologically, I'm just all these things are lining up, and I'm sort of thinking to myself, like I'm having flashbacks to the early 90s and studying politics and economics in university, you know?
Yeah, some difficult times, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
It is 6:12 a.m. And just before we turn to the weather, why don't I just do the bus challenges here? So no buses today in Mountain View School Division because of poor rural road conditions. And then Brandon School Division buses won't operate outside the city of Brandon today. All of the Brandon School Division schools are open. Attendance at schools is at parental discretion where travel is required, and call the school if you can't make it. And now, here's Abby Adeyemi with the actual forecast. Hi.
Hi there. I'll just take it from the roads. I see ice-covered conditions all the way from, outside Winnipeg down south all the way to the Emerson border. That is ice-covered, so you might want to take it easy as you commute down that route. And then the northern parts of the city, we're looking at more like partly covered condition this morning, so take it easy out there. Across the province, we will see mostly cloudy skies today. Now, there is a slight chance of light snow in the forecast, with temperatures just remaining cold with the risk of frostbite in some areas, especially in the northern part of the province. We do have that northwest winds, which will be coming in, and then it's going to be light to breezy in many parts of the province as we get into the day. We're going to see temperatures ranging from -8 to -22. But Winnipeg, at this point, we are at -9. Expect mainly cloudy conditions today. We have that slim chance of light snow in the forecast, with winds becoming northwest and then light as you get close to the noon period. And a high would just stay around this -9 for today, but the wind chill makes it feel colder. And in other region, we're looking at similar conditions: light snow, breezy conditions, chilly, light snow. And overall, I will say temperatures will be dropping across the province, and Winnipeg is expected to stay one of the warmest spots. That's what I can say for this morning, Mercy. But for today, we're just going to stay at -9 at this point and see cloudy conditions. Anything on the road, let us know. 788-320-3093.
Well, a Winnipegger's hoping to spread some Christmas cheer in her neighborhood. For the last 3 years, she's been giving away books from her free library in front of her home in Island Lakes. This year, she wanted to do something a little bit different, and so she is here to talk about it. She is Chantel Durocking and joins us now via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being up early.
Thanks for having me this morning.
So you're doing something special with Santa letters. What have you got planned?
So what I have done is I've put a little box in my little free library, and it's letters for Santa. So it gives the families a chance to come and deliver letters to Santa. And in return, they will get a letter from Santa as well as a book that is related to their interest as well as their age.
Wow, so you're tying together the love of writing in a way, the love of reading, and the love of Santa.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Have you started already? Have you had any responses back, or is this just sort of in the beginning stages?
No, so just our first day, we already got 5 letters, which started on Sunday. And it's been fun for my family and I because I have older children, and so we get a chance to run out and go and take a look and see what kind of letters we get. And so the response has been phenomenal so far, in my opinion. I think we're at about 12 letters in 2 days.
So it's really special that you've got this, like, this connection with Santa where you're able to help him out with all of these letters and things like that. It's amazing. Why did you want to do this year to expand things?
For myself, writing to Santa has always been a tradition. I am a scrapbooker, and so I've always photocopied my children's letters to Santa, and then as well as Santa's reply. And so I just thought, with Canada Post being on strike, I realize they're back today, that I would be able to help out Santa by getting those letters out to the children.
Well, they still need the help because everything's backlogged. So I'm certain, even though they're back this morning, I'm certain they're grateful. What needs to be included if somebody in your neighborhood, Island Lakes, because this is neighborhood specific, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if someone's in the Island Lakes neighborhood and they're listening, what needs to be included to make sure that letter gets back from Santa Claus?
So make sure we have the child's name, and the age would be great, as well as an address.
You first posted this idea on Facebook. What kind of reaction did you get there?
Well, the response was phenomenal. I was actually floored. It was all positive. People were like, absolutely, please do this. We could use this. I have a Santa letter that needs to get out. And I believe from yesterday, from what I saw, it had reached 1.3 thousand people so far.
Wow. Maybe the idea will take off in other neighborhoods and people will be helping the elves this year and Santa Claus overall. Who knows? I love your mailbox. It's really elaborate. Can you describe it for the radio listeners? We've got a picture up on YouTube here.
Sure. So it's just it's like a metal tin box, and on the very top is a little slot for the kids to put their Santa letters in, and it says letters to Santa. And then on the very front is a latch that I can open up, and we can remove the letters to make sure that they get to Santa.
Now, I'm not sure if you're prepared to do this or not, but I wonder if you could read part of a letter. Do you have any letters there that you're able to share?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have a few of them here beside me.
That'll be a nice way to start the morning. And
yeah, exactly.
Love it.
So this one is really cute. It says, to Santa, the one who comes in my chimney.
And that's it.
I thought that was
brief.
Yeah, I thought that was cute.
A kid.
My name is Kyle. Yeah, exactly. My name is Kyle, and I am 10 years old, and I live in my house. I thought you should know that I have been extra nice. My favorite thing that happened this year was our Disneyland trip. For Christmas, I would like the Great Hall Lego set, which I had to look it up. It's a Harry Potter Lego set. Thank you, Kyle.
Very nice. Good writing, Kyle. I approve. A beginning, a middle, an end, and some description there as well about, why Santa might consider getting you the Great Hall. What is it like? You were talking about what it's like to read all the letters, but do you remember yourself as a kid writing letters too?
Absolutely, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a tradition in my family, and that's why I wanted to continue it this year, because it's important to myself. It's important to keep traditions, and so I just thought this would be a great way to keep it going.
It's good to spread the joy. How many deliveries do you expect to make for Santa in the end? Do you have a sense, or do you have a cap?
No cap. No, I will do my best. I did have some Island Lakers who reached out and said, if you need any help, please reach out to us. So far, just between my children and I, we've been able to keep up with everything and be able to get them to Santa. So so I'm hoping to continue with that.
And just this morning, Chantel, what kind of books can kids expect to get from Santa? Because remember, we're talking about the letters because it's new, but this is also about the free little library.
Yes, absolutely. So we're basing it based on their age and also their interests. So, for instance, Kyle may get a Harry Potter book because based on his letter, he loves Harry Potter. I've learned that some children like Piggy and Elephant, or they like the Owl Diaries. So it's it's getting a feel for what they like and then going and look to see what we can provide to them based on their age and interest.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you. And thank you so much. I'm going to mention the address, obviously, so people know where they can drop the letters. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds okay.
Okay. You take care. Have a good day.
Yes, you too. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. That's Chantal Durocking, who's helping to deliver letters to Santa. Not only that, but with books. Her little free library then is located at 577 Island Shore Boulevard. Now, remember, this is specifically helping Santa for kids in that Island Lakes neighborhood. So that's what they're able to keep up with to help out. She's asking letters be submitted no later than December 21st. So you have a little bit of time here, but still, that's coming up fast, right? I think that's Saturday already. Wow. So December 21st, that is the cutoff.
The customer you have reached,
Radio Noon,
is not available. Please leave your message at the tone.
Hello, this is Santa Claus. Just calling you back to say that I talked to the elves, and yes, they will let me take some calls from the good girls and boys of Manitoba on Radio Noon Christmas Eve from 12:30 to 1 p.m. Looking forward to it, so please don't hold any calls.
Santa Claus is coming to Radio Noon Christmas Eve from 12:30 to 1. Get those questions and Christmas wishes ready and dial 204-780-0893 for your chance to talk to Santa.
Santa! I got that Will Ferrell thing in my head. It's 6:23 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're with CBC's Information Radio, your morning show. -9 and a 30% chance of light snow through the day. Well, Canada Post workers are going to be trudging through some of the snow that came down yesterday because this morning is the first morning they will be back on the job delivering the mail in some 4 weeks. Operations are back after the strike. Now, it ended, or I shouldn't say it's resolved, but it ended right now as a result of an order back to work from the Canada Industrial Relations Board. With the current contract extended until May then, and a 5% wage increase so far, they still have much more to hammer out in a deal. For his perspective, though, this morning, Ian Lee's back with us, Associate Professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. I actually spoke with him at 6.
Good morning, Marcy.
So here we are. What do you make of where things stand right now?
Well, I do understand why the Minister of Labour sent them back to work, notwithstanding that he promised multiple times that he wouldn't. I say that because I studied every strike in the post office in my PhD thesis 30-odd years ago. These were the strikes in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they were all legislated back to work. And the reason why was because in those days, Canada Post was absolutely essential. It was the payment system. Companies would send out their invoices, or utility companies, or credit card companies, or banks, or whatever, and we would famously write a check and put it in an envelope with a stamp and send it back, captured the phrase, the check is in the mail. Those days are gone, but having said that, there's still significant components or subsets of the Canadian population, like small business and rural and remote communities, that are still very dependent on the post office. And so the pressure day by day got stronger and stronger. It ratcheted up. And so at some point, the government of the day, whether it's liberal or conservative in the past 40 years, would cave in and say, okay, that's it. So I get that. But very quickly, Marcy, there's one big difference between this decision and the Minister of Labour's decision on the Port of Vancouver and Port of Montreal and the two railroads. In those instances, they imposed compulsory binding arbitration. In other words, an actual settlement was imposed on the workers in the companies. This instance, they did not. They kicked it down the road for 5 months.
So what do you make of that?
Well, what it tells me is what we all know, that the issues are so intractable that the gulf between CUPW's vision and Canada Post's vision is so wide, there is no common ground. And there is, therefore, no easy solution.
So the union has called the order by the Industrial Relations Board unlawful. Is that always the language you've heard? As you mentioned, you studied, every time they've been, ordered back to work.
Right. I certainly understand that claim, and it's been, you're right. It wasn't just on the Canada Post intervention. It was also on the Port of Montreal, Port of Vancouver, and so forth. And they're referencing the famous Supreme Court decision of 2015, which I've read several times. I slightly disagree with the union take, and I am unionized, by the way, at my university. The Supreme Court never said that every last living, breathing Canadian has the right to strike. They expressly, in writing, stated RCMP, military, emergency services people do not. So it's not quite absolute. Yes, most Canadians have the right to strike, but not everybody. So that's the first point. The second point, very quickly, is I have no doubt this is going to be litigated all the way up to the Supreme Court, which is a good thing, a very good thing, because we need clarity from the Supreme Court. Yes, people have the right to strike writ large, but where is the line between those that do have the right to strike and essential services? That has not been, yes, there's lots of people that have views about essential services, but the Supreme Court has not expressly stated, here is the line, and do essential services, can they apply to private commercial products like rail services or postal services? Or is it only for pure public goods like national defense and military, police and that sort of thing?
What kind of an impact do you think that what has happened in so far and this agreement, temporary agreement, I guess we should call it, because this is certainly not a settlement by any stretch, right? People have to understand that. But what kind of impact do you think this will have on future labor negotiations?
I think the labor movement is going to realize that in some parts of the economy, and I mean transportation and communications, that the greater good is going to trump the right to strike. And I did a separate paper on Parliament legislating striking workers back to work from 1950 to today, and they've done it 44 times. That's called a trend. And it was both Liberal governments and Conservative governments. But the really important point, Marcy, was that when I looked at that legislation, all the bills, and not one of them was defeated in Parliament. Every one was passing a law legislating striking workers back to work. Every one of those times of the 44, save and except 2 times, they were all in transportation. And so what I said in that paper was, Parliament is very clearly saying, successive parliaments for 75 years have said, yes, you have the legal right to strike, but if you're in transportation and communications, we will not let you sabotage or bring down the economy. So that's the union movement, the labor relations, collective bargaining people are going to have to deal with that, because I think that that's a very clear consensus in the country, supported by public opinion polls, that yes, you have the right to strike, but you don't have the right to bring down the economy.
We'll leave it there this morning. Thank you very much, as always.
Thanks very much, Marcy.
Ian Lee, an associate professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Now, if you want to weigh in, check out the thread on our Facebook page. A lot of you have been weighing in with everything from I'm so glad they're back, this is critical for me, many people in rural areas with that point of view, to other people saying this doesn't impact me at all, to other people taking exception with the government ordering workers back to work. So all kinds of perspectives on this from a Manitoba point of view, and you can find that thread on my Facebook page. It's Marcy Marcusa, and it acts as a show page on Facebook while we're on the air. No buses today in the Mountain View School Division and the Brandon School Division, no buses in the rural areas. We'll have more on the weather conditions that have led to this coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is -9. That's pretty much where we're going to stay through the day. That is seasonal. Enjoy it, because we are plunged into some very cold weather starting tomorrow. A Manitoba family says their aunt's friend allegedly stole hundreds of thousands of dollars after she died. But even after getting a court judgment in their favor, they're still fighting to get her to pay it back. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargoot has the story.
When Donna Manning died in 2015, her friend Kathy Penner was the only one by her side. She called the family to break the news and to say she'd been named executor of Donna's estate. Penner also told the family Donna didn't have very much money, which didn't make sense to her family. That's because Donna was a retired bookkeeper and had always been very frugal. They later learned that Penner had allegedly spent $170,000 of Donna's money before and after she died. Glenda Manning is Donna's niece.
She became executor because she knew that as executor, we wouldn't have access to the bank accounts. And it took us 6 years to get that access to find the proof.
The family sued Penner, who didn't show up to court to defend herself. Penner said in an affidavit she helped Donna, and any money she got, Donna wanted her to have. The family was awarded a $240,000 judgment. They garnish Penner's wages and receive about $800 a month. At that rate, it will take 25 years for the debt to be paid. Winnipeg police investigated, but the Crown wouldn't authorize charges. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau broke his silence last night after one of the most dramatic days in Canadian political history.
Thank you all for being here tonight. It's obviously been an eventful day, and it has not been an easy day.
Trudeau at a Liberal Party fundraiser. 2 cabinet ministers resigned yesterday, including his finance minister, Chrystia Freeland. She was supposed to deliver the government's fall economic update in the House. The opposition is calling for Trudeau's resignation, but the Prime Minister is defiant.
There is no place I'd rather be than Canada, and it is the absolute privilege of my life to serve as your Prime Minister.
Trudeau reportedly telling a Liberal caucus meeting late yesterday he will take time to reflect on their concerns about his leadership. We are getting reaction now from the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on his Truth Social platform last night. Trump says the great state of Canada is stunned as the finance minister resigns or was fired from her position by Governor Justin Trudeau. He goes on to say her behavior was totally toxic and not at all conducive to making deals which are good for the very unhappy citizens of Canada. She will not be missed. All of that from Donald Trump on social media last night. You can hear the latest on this story coming up on World Report at 7. Manitoba's finance minister is calling a new fiscal projection good news. Adrian Salas says a projected $1.3 billion deficit for the current fiscal year is positive because it is less than last year. However, Salas' budget called for a deficit that was $513 million lower. PC Midland MLA Lauren Stone says Sala and the NDP government are mistaken.
They're saying on one hand, their progress in shrinking the deficit, but at the same time, they've increased the deficit by over $500 million. This is not good news for Manitobans.
Overspending in healthcare is the main driver of the higher projected deficit. A Manitoba woman is discouraged and in pain days after having her right leg amputated above the knee. 61-year-old Roseanne Milburn spent days languishing in hospital with an open wound after knee replacement surgery. That led to a second infection and then the amputation. Milburn doesn't know how much longer she'll be in hospital. She needs weeks of rehabilitation.
I'm not used to anyone doing anything for me. I'm the matriarch of the family. I take care of the family. And now it's really hard to have them take care of me. It's hard to accept because I'm the one that's supposed to be taking care of them.
Milburn hopes to move to a hospital closer to her home in Ely, and she knows she won't be home for Christmas. Canada Post employees head back to work today after being ordered to return. Winnipeg business owner Narissa Manzano says customers have been understanding about the disruption to deliveries, but the co-owner of The Locals on Sherbrooke Street says her bottom line took a hit as they had to cover a lot of expenses.
Our online store is set up with Canada Post, so the rates are not really the same with other carriers. So if there was like a price difference, we kind of just covered it just to keep everyone happy.
The Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered Canada Post employees to return to their jobs today. The post office says it will still take some time to clear the backlog of mail and packages. You can find more on these stories as well as other news as it develops throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, as you know, Abby Adeyemi, our friend here behind the controls, likes in December to wear some like awesome Christmas sweaters.
Yeah.
Like almost every day. So today, let's put this up on YouTube if we can. So today he's got the cookie sweater. There it is with the gingerbread man on it.
Aww.
And it's got me thinking about cookies and the season. And do you bake a lot? Do you do a lot of cookies still?
I do.
Yeah. What's your favorite one to make? Or what's the family love the most?
Do you know what? So we do have like a sugar cookie that we make, and then the little boys all come and decorate it and make a big mess. But it's so much fun and they're delicious.
Cute. Abby, do you do cookies?
You know I'm not a sweet person.
I know you're not. That's why I'm asking.
You know I don't do sweet stuff.
But he's wearing a sweet sweater.
I know, except Puff Puff. Your Puff Puff's kind of
Yeah, I
sweet.
like the Puff
That's kind of
Puff.
sweet. So years ago, we this really speaks to my mindset, and maybe I genetically come by this. So sometimes there's things where you just go, how did you not realize that? Do you know? So my mom and my sister and I used to make the shortbread cutouts every year. Right?
I love that.
Right? So the different shapes and stuff. So I don't know if Abby, you for sure haven't heard this story. Heather, you might have because we worked together for 1,000 years. But we used to make the snowman. So the snowman cutter that we had, it would always be like, okay, who's making the snowman? And it would always be like, oh gosh, because the snowman cutter, like his neck was so thin that when you cut the snowman out, like you have to be really careful because his head would break off or, like his neck was so thin.
That's never good.
Yeah. So then this was our cutter though. So then it was seriously, I'm not even exaggerating. I think I was in my mid-20s with this snowman cutter and I looked at my mom and I'm like, why don't we just take the metal cutter? It wasn't even a set cutter. It was metal. It was pliable. Why don't we make his neck fatter? Like, why don't we spread it out?
Yeah.
But who doesn't realize that for like 20 years? Me, my mom, and my sister. All of us.
Leave it as it is,
I
Marcy.
know. Do you know what? That's the truth, though. Like, part of it now is like it didn't look like our cookies that year we did that. It was like, what happened to the skinny neck snowman cookie? Like, the heads aren't breaking off on the plate, and that was our thing.
Do you still make the snowman cookie?
You
with
know
the thick
what?
neck?
I got to ask my mom because she still has. I don't have that cutter in my house. I wonder if she's got it in her house. And we would have squished it back skinny because I think we felt so sad that year we realized it. Yeah, I love that. The afternoon show, actually, Up to Speed, has been doing something. I'm not sure if they launched it yesterday, if they're going to do it today, but they're talking about this. The traditions that are not necessarily tied to culture or religion, and there's plenty of those, of course, at this time of year over the many different holidays being celebrated, and at Christmas certainly. But sort of it's those family things that become traditions in some strange way. So if you want to weigh in, you can call Up to Speed's listener line. All right. This cookie sweater got me on a big tangent. That's what Abby's sweater says. All right, let's get into the forecast here today. Abby, we're not going to get snow falling like yesterday.
No, it's going to be more of like cloudy conditions across board today. We will spot slight chance of light snow here and there. Winnipeg, for example, we will have a slight chance of showers, like more like 30% of snow, light snow today. Currently, we are at -9. We will be there most of the day. Then it's going to feel like -20 sometime this morning into the afternoon period. These cloudy conditions will continue into the evening. And we may still see that light snow if they come later tonight. But then overnight, we'll see some clear conditions that would make way for the sunny day we are going to be expecting tomorrow. Now, heading west to Brandon, it is currently -8 over there. We're seeing light snow in the Westman region. It will also be cloudy there. This light snow will be tapering off sometime this morning, followed by, a mix of sun and clouds, and then some breezy conditions at some point. And your highs would stay around -8. In the south central region, similar to Winnipeg, cloudy conditions you will see. Heading to the Parkland region, Dauphin is at -10 at this point. We're also seeing light snow in that area. Expect some cloudy conditions, and there's still going to be, that light snow will taper off, and then you might spot it later in the day, but a mix of sun and clouds will be in play for you. Highs will be around the same temperature as at now, -10. Gimli is also around that same condition, -10. For the Interlake region, more like cloudy conditions, a slim chance of light snow, and then temperatures will just stay around -10 for today. In the Pamphlet Influence, we're looking at temperatures around -14, cloudy skies. You're seeing a slight chance of light snow also in the forecast, and temperatures will be dropping to around -17 this afternoon. For the Thompson and Churchill region, Thompson is sitting at -17 with light snow at this time. This period of light snow will stay with you for most of the day. Highs will be around -15. And then for Churchill, more like ice crystals in the air. Temperatures around -22. The wind chill actually for folks up there is around -39 this morning. That's a risk of frostbite in play. So you might want to bundle up as you head outside. In comparison to Winnipeg, that we're at -19, I would say.
10-degree difference.
10-degree difference, yeah.
We're a lot warmer.
But for today,
In
we're
the
just
south.
going to stay at -9 all day.
All right, Abby, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have issues. The roads are slick this morning. Regular winter driving. Check 511 before you go out. But school divisions are having challenges with some buses. So there's no buses running today in the Mountain View School Division, and Brandon School Division isn't operating buses outside of the city of Brandon, but all school is on. Let's get to business news at 6:41 a.m. on your Tuesday morning with Crystalie Ramlakan, who's here with our business report. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So, wow, Ottawa yesterday, it just kept, what is going on? How are businesses reacting then specifically to Chrystia Freeland stepping down as finance minister? Of course, because let's remember here, this was just hours before she was set to present the federal government's, fall economic update, which in the end, no one presented. It was just tabled for us to look at. But what are businesses reacting to?
Yeah, it was a pretty chaotic day, people waiting what was going to happen. And now business leaders say the resignation adds uncertainty to trade talks. So some are worried it leaves Canada without a quarterback at a critical moment for the country's economy and trade relationships. So Freeland's resignation letter warned Canada faces a grave challenge with the incoming Trump administration in the U.S. and its threat of tariffs. And in the letter, she told Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that the federal government needs to take the threat seriously while eschewing costly political gimmicks, which make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment. So the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association says the government is now missing the most experienced and competent hand we had in Canada-U.S. relations at a time when we need it the most. And the CEO of the Business Council says it is deeply troubling that the former finance minister believes the government is opting for costly political gimmicks at a time when federal finances are severely strained. So the government's move to offer a 2-month GST break on certain goods over the holidays kicked in on Saturday, but has received lukewarm support from consumers and businesses. So for more on all of this, here's Jim Balsillie, who is the former BlackBerry chairman and the co-founder of the Council of Canadian Innovators.
This comes from inattention to productivity and prosperity and really the benefit of Canadians. And so I don't think it's relevant in the sense that nothing is different this week than last week, other than perhaps the lack of competence and chaos is a little more apparent.
So the Business Council of Canada says the country needs stable and credible leadership in this economic moment. And the council says Canada should be meeting the moment from a position of strength, not weakness.
Let's go to another story. We'll have more on this half hour, including Manitobans weighing in. But you have the latest update on how the real estate sector actually is doing in this country.
Yeah, so home sales surged last month. The Canadian Real Estate Association says the number of homes sold in November rose 26% compared with a year ago, marking the second straight month of large year-over-year gains. So almost 38,000 homes changed hands last month compared with about 30,000 the year before. And the association says activity was driven by gains in Greater Vancouver, Calgary, Greater Toronto, and Montreal, along with some smaller cities in Alberta and Ontario. And the national average sale price rose 7.4% compared with a year earlier to about $694,000. So November saw prices move materially higher at the national level for the first time in almost a year and a half. Now, CREA says normally we might expect this market rebound to take a pause before resuming in the spring. However, the Bank of Canada's latest interest rate cut, along with a loosening of mortgage rules, could mean a more active winter market than normal. And, we saw the Bank of Canada's 0.5 percentage point cut last week marked the 5th consecutive time it has lowered its policy rate since June, bringing the key interest rate to 3.25%.
How are markets looking today, Crystalie?
So in Europe, markets are trading lower. Germany is up, the UK is down, France is up. In Asia, markets are mixed as investors look toward the U.S. Federal Reserve's latest interest rate decision this week. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is down 85 cents to 69.85 U.S. per barrel. Gold is down 11.40 to $2,641 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is down almost 0.2 of a cent to 70 cents U.S.
Whoa, okay. I was saying earlier, it feels like the 80s, and there's another sign. All right, thank you very much, Christley. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Christley Ramlicam with Business News on CBC. It is 6:46 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's -9. We're going to stay there for most of the day in Winnipeg. Well, let's hear from the Premier of Manitoba on what happened in Ottawa yesterday and also on what he was doing, which was meeting with other premiers to talk about the President-elect Trump, the proposed trade tariffs on this country. He was in conversation, Wab Kinew was, late yesterday afternoon with David Cochrane on CBC, host of Power and Politics.
What was your reaction when Doug Ford put Chrystia Freeland on speakerphone in your meeting and she thanked you all for your work on a day when she is leaving as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister?
Well, it was nice to hear from Chrystia Freeland. Certainly we've had the ability to do some good things together for Manitobans and Canadians. And I'd been texting with her earlier in the day, and it was just nice to have that chance as a group to thank her for the job that she did. But I want to make clear that while there is this whole drama unfolding in Ottawa, the conversation in the room really did focus on Trump and how do we present this unified response as the premiers. The leadership, is for us to present this Team Canada approach, and we are united when it comes to the need for investments in the military, border security, to crack down on drug trafficking. And the reason why we as premiers were able to come together on those points is because what's the downside? These are things that benefit Canadians, they benefit Manitobans. And so certainly, even though you have an interesting day in Ottawa to perhaps put it charitably, we as premiers are still focused on job one, which is protecting jobs, protecting your jobs and our economy, and just making sure that we're ready for January 20th.
Well, look, interesting is one word for it. I'll give you that, Premier. But I'm wondering, as someone who has been asked to be part of Team Canada since that First Ministers meeting you had a couple of weeks ago, where you made the very salient point that you're not going to argue your way out of this with Donald Trump. I wonder where you think this leaves Team Canada if the chair of the Canada-U.S. Committee at the federal level, the person who led the NAFTA renegotiations last time, is gone, and the Prime Minister is even further diminished by this move.
Well, I think it shows that it is the premiers who are going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting this time. And I think that was already the plan. We communicated that to the Prime Minister and to the ministers who were on those previous calls. But we've also been reaching out to our counterparts in the United States of America. We're talking about people in Congress. We're talking about people at the state level. And it really is, I think, that kind of all hands on deck approach that we as the leaders of the provinces and territories can bring forward right now, adding those perspectives when it comes to boosting the military spending so that it reaches 2%, that NATO target. Again, adding resources on the border, helping to crack down on the scourge that's driving the addictions crisis, drug trafficking. When we put that all together, I do think that we're building a comprehensive approach. And, at this moment where the federal government is going through this turmoil, I think it is hopefully reassuring to Canadians that you do have a consensus among premiers, even on topics where on other days perhaps there's a little bit of disagreement, if you will. Today, 100% unity. Unity that we need to present a common Team Canada approach that, as we still look ahead to January 20th, the opening moves, if you will, in terms of our response with the U.S. should focus on the border, should focus on military spending, should focus on cracking down on illegal drugs in this country. I think that given the timing of where we're at, it's a good opening step in terms of Team Canada's relationship with an incoming Trump 2.0 administration.
So that conversation late in the afternoon, that is Premier Wab Kinew in conversation with CBC's David Cochrane, host of Power and Politics. David was trying to get the Premier to respond more to Chrystia Freeland and what had developed through the day. And he made a quip saying, I wouldn't want anyone walking into Manitoba and making a comment on me and my future, so he wouldn't comment on Trudeau's future specifically. But there he's commenting on what the premiers have had to say about future relations and trade with the States. Now, President-elect Donald Trump, as you may have heard in the news, did make a social post late last night about Chrystia Freeland's departure. Quote, her behavior was totally toxic and not at all conducive to making deals which are good for the very unhappy citizens of Canada. End quote. Trump went on. He ended his post saying, quote, she will not be missed. So we're already hearing from down south on all of this. We're hearing from you as well. So I know Ryan Tumulty's going to talk to us about Chrystia Freeland's departure in Ottawa. Hi there, Ryan.
Hi there.
Can I read you a couple things Manitobans have been saying?
Sure.
Okay, so obviously Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, she's resigning as the Cabinet Minister. This was the same day she was to deliver the fall economic statement. We still haven't heard from the Prime Minister this morning officially on all of this. We asked for Manitobans' perspective. Shola Agbula wrote in, time to call an election. The selfish interest of one leader should not hold the country hostage. Time for an election. Marilyn Kershane saying Freeland was his best man. She should run for PM. She was so loyal to him, and to get a slap in the face by Trudeau. Now we can know he can spit anyone out of office. Finally, Benjamin Maia writing in, failure to address inflation, rising cost of living, or ballooning national debt can have a tangible impact on citizens. Critics may argue that Canada's rising federal debt, affordability crisis, and housing challenges demonstrate a failure in fiscal leadership. If a parliamentary democracy like Canada is losing the confidence of Parliament, is often a direct reason for change. So if the Prime Minister's own party members or coalition parties express dissatisfaction with leadership, it may indicate that they no longer command sufficient political support to govern effectively. Now, obviously, that's a wide swath of opinions, but it gives us tons to chew on. Ready, set, go, Ryan. Where do you want to start? What a day.
Yeah, I mean, you heard there, though, I think what is a growing problem. What I didn't hear from any of that sentiment that you just read there was someone saying the Prime Minister was right to kick Freeland out of Cabinet. He's doing a great job. That is, I think, the challenge that the government is facing, is that it just looks like that they are constantly in some level of crisis here. Having your Finance Minister resign on the day she is supposed to read the fall fiscal update is catastrophic. I was on a bus with other Parliament Hill journalists. We were headed, it's a shuttle bus to where they do the fall fiscal update, where they do the embargoed reading. And that news broke, and you could hear gasps. You could hear words that I can't say on radio shouted really loud. It was just stunning to see that happen.
And it's not just resigning. This letter she left behind is a statement. It's a statement about the relationship. It's between her and Trudeau, and where they view things, the future policy. Obviously, there's differences there, to say the least. She uses the word gimmicks, referring to some of the things that have been put forward in the fiscal planning for this country. So what led up to all of this?
Yeah, so we've been hearing, that there were tensions between the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister for months, really now. Didn't get any sort of, specifics. It's not unusual for there to be tensions between the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister. That sort of crosses party lines. That's an old, a common problem. But it seems like they all came to a head on Friday, and the Prime Minister, and this is the part I find stunning, the Prime Minister told Chrystia Freeland on Friday she would not be continuing on as Finance Minister. He was moving her to be a minister without portfolio, focused on the Canada-U.S. relationship, but that means no government department behind you, no staff really behind you, a much smaller role in a lot of respects. He told her that all on Friday, and then still expected her to come out and read the fiscal update on Monday, knowing that she disagreed with a lot of it. So, that I think is that I think is quite an approach from the Prime Minister. I'm surprised that he was surprised, I guess. And so, she delivers not just her resignation, but as you said, this stunning criticism of the fiscal update. When she's talking about gimmicks, she's talking about the GST cut that Liberals are out there campaigning on right now. So just a real crisis of confidence in this government.
So where does he go from here? I mean, obviously the talk, the possibility of Justin Trudeau stepping down was all everybody was talking about yesterday. People were poised coming out of the caucus meeting to see what would happen there. Where are we at now with his leadership?
I mean, it is getting shakier and shakier all the time. Before yesterday, I think we had 2 Liberal MPs who were publicly on the record with their names attached calling for him to resign. Now it is up to, I believe, 6. And that number will probably only grow. We know privately many of those Liberal MPs are saying he needs to step down. That push is growing. And we also know that the NDP don't seem likely to support this government when Parliament returns in January. So he's going to face an election early if he stays on. And he's going to face more and more pressure to leave if he tries to stay on. Can
I ask you a last question here before we go? We just heard from our Premier Wab Kinew meeting with the, with the premiers. There was some analysis I was watching yesterday as I was watching, all of this unfold and listening to the various perspectives from pundits and also analysts alike. But there was some thinking that actually having the premiers get together in this way at a time when the federal government seems to have all these, obviously is having all these issues, the governing Liberals, that actually wouldn't necessarily send a good message to the states when it comes to the incoming Trump administration, because that sort of further says that, you're going to be dealing somehow with a fractured country. Whereas it was positioned by our Premier Wab Kinew that this was a good thing, that the premiers have things somewhat, they're in somewhat alignment in terms of having a united front, even though they have differing opinions on how to handle things, are coming together and talking. What's your sense of where we go from here, like in how the premiers in this moment and how they might fit into the picture?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of the premiers as a united front, I guess there's 2 problems. One, I'm not convinced that they are a united front. You've heard Doug Ford in Ontario talking about some sort of tariff on energy exports. People who premiers who export electricity and premiers who export oil and gas have all said that's a non-starter and are frustrated by that. And secondly, I mean, even if all of the premiers were united, they are not the national government of Canada. That is not how this works. They don't have the same levers as the federal government. They can't impose trade tariffs. They can't do a lot of the other things. They can't work with allies around the world to pressure the U.S. They can't work, with the Mexican national government, if that's what it comes to, or other governments around the world to put pressure on the U.S. to reverse what could be really devastating economic policies. So, I think the premiers meeting are doing the best they can in a bad situation, but this should be the work of a united, focused federal government. And it's not a government that we have right now because they are focused on these partisan political issues.
Not this morning, anyway. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much.
No problem. Take care.
Ryan Tumulty, political reporter with the Toronto Star. Here's Heather now with Manitoba News headlines.
Good morning. Well, another threat means another day when Elmwood High School is closed. Winnipeg School Division confirms the school will be closed today after a threat last night. Yesterday, threats shut down both Elmwood and Oak Park High Schools. A Manitoba family alleges a woman stole $170,000 from their dead aunt. Donna Manning was 82 when she died in 2015. Her friend was named executor. But when the family got access to Donna's accounts, they alleged the friend had spent tens of thousands of their aunt's money and charged it to the estate. We'll hear more coming up at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We'll also have more on that story in the next hour of Information Radio. Plus, we're going to hear from the Winnipegger who made big waves on Survivor this season. She just didn't get into the final, but we'll talk to her in an interview after 7, and we'll check in with how you're feeling on day 1 of the Postal Service strike being over. I guess this morning, Postal Service is restored. So what are you waiting for in the mail? Mountain View School Division not running buses. Brandon School Division no rural buses. Stay with us. World Report's next.
On the Current. Australia making a big move, becoming the first country to ban social media for kids under 16.
Concerns about kids and phones have been growing for years, but the author Jonathan Haidt brought the issue to the forefront with his blockbuster book, The Anxious Generation, and the discussion it spurred among parents, teachers, and governments. Jonathan Haidt, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Justin Trudeau's political future is anything but certain. The Prime Minister could be preparing to campaign for hearts and minds when the odds are stacked against him, or he could be about to quit.
And I cannot emphasize enough just how damn proud I am of what we have done over the past 9 years, and it's because of you.
That was Trudeau speaking at a Liberal donor party last night, just hours after Chrystia Freeland's resignation. It was a supportive crowd, more supportive than the Liberal caucus. Some of Trudeau's own MPs are calling on him to resign, and Canadians are still waiting for a public address. Let's go to Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, where do things stand this morning?
Marcia, for weeks now, Pierre Poilievre has been telling Canadians that Justin Trudeau has lost control. And for a few hours yesterday, that wasn't a rhetorical stretch, as this town waited to see if it was even possible to have a fiscal update without a finance minister. After hours of confusion, the public accounts and Chrystia Freeland's parting fiscal measures were finally public, and the Liberal caucus headed behind closed doors. Window curtains, though, were left open, so we could see Justin Trudeau trying to rally his team. According to sources in the room, Chrystia Freeland got a standing ovation when she entered. The Prime Minister, apparently, got a hug from her and an earful from others. By the end of the day, more backbenchers had added their signatures and their outside voices to this push to convince Trudeau to step aside. MPs like Chad Collins.
I think the only path forward for us is to choose a new leader and to present a new plan to Canadians with a different vision.
The Prime Minister then appeared briefly at a holiday reception for party donors, went home to sleep on it. And as we all wake up this morning, we're still waiting for word on a cabinet shuffle that was already expected this week, one that now is even more complicated with new questions about whether the top job could soon be one of the vacancies.
This is the last day the House of Commons is sitting. Could we see a snap confidence vote?
No. The voting opportunities for the opposition to defeat the government were all last week. But how the leaders reacted to yesterday's chaos previews what's ahead after the break.
Justin Trudeau has lost control, and yet he clings to power.
Mr. Trudeau's government is over.
I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
Don't miss that last line from Jagmeet Singh. That's the first time he's openly called for Trudeau to step down. And his House leader confirmed if Trudeau's still Prime Minister when the House returns, New Democrats are preparing to end this Parliament.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Donald Trump says he's happy to see Chrystia Freeland leave her job as finance minister. He posted late last night on his site Truth Social. Trump said Freeland's behavior was toxic and not conducive to making deals. Back in 2017 and 2018, Freeland played key roles in the renegotiation of NAFTA. She was the lead minister for all cross-border issues. The federal Liberals were dealt another loss overnight in British Columbia. For the third time this year, a by-election seat flipped. The Conservatives won the riding of Cloverdale-Langley City. Georgie Smythe has the details.
The seat of Cloverdale-Langley City was vacated 6 months ago by Liberal MP John Aldag, who resigned to run in the provincial election. The seat has seesawed between the Liberals and Conservatives in recent elections, but this was seen as another test for the Liberals, battling diminishing support and a crumbling cabinet. More than 65% of the by-election vote went to the Conservatives' Tamara Jansen, who held the seat from 2019 to 2021. She declined to be interviewed on her victory. Liberal candidate Madison Fleischer attracted just 16% of the vote.
It might not have been the result that we were expecting or hoping, but you know what? We have a general election to look ahead to.
Turnout overall was very low, with about 15% of the electorate's voters casting a ballot. Proximity to Christmas and the Canada Post strike may have contributed. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Langley, BC.
Russia is vowing revenge after one of its top generals was killed in a bomb attack. Igor Kirillov was killed when a bomb was detonated outside an apartment building in Moscow earlier today. His assistant was also killed in the explosion. Kirillov was in charge of Russia's nuclear defense forces. Ukraine is taking responsibility. Crystal Gomansing is following the story from London.
Wind whips police tape strung up to block a path to a building surrounded by several high-rise apartments. What appears to be two wrapped bodies on the ground in clear view. I only knew him from the media. I had no idea he lived in our block, said one resident standing at the crime scene. A bomb hidden in an electric scooter killed Lieutenant General Igor Kurilov and an aide. Kurilov was in charge of nuclear protection forces in Moscow. On Monday, Ukraine named him in absentia in a criminal case for using banned chemical weapons against Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines.
The prosecutors charged him yesterday. The bomb went off today.
Ann Applebaum writes for The Atlantic and is a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian.
The people who would have a motive would be either the Ukrainians or some of their allies inside Russia.
A criminal investigation has been launched. Investigative Committee spokesperson Svetlana Petrenko said a task force is working at the scene. The deadly attack happened around 6 a.m. in Moscow, a few kilometers from the Kremlin. An unnamed official with the Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU, says it was behind the deadly attack. And now Russia's Security Council says Ukraine's leadership will face imminent revenge. The 54-year-old is the most senior Russian military officer to be assassinated inside Russia by Ukraine. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
Vanuatu is dealing with widespread destruction from a magnitude 7.3 earthquake just off its coast overnight. Here is Australia's Foreign Minister, Penny Wong.
I say to the people of Vanuatu, you are family and Australia is here to help.
Communication lines are still down, so the extent of the damage in Vanuatu is unclear. Early reports suggest there are multiple collapsed buildings and injured people. Canada Post employees are returning to work today, and mail service is expected to restart soon. That's a relief to Lisa Wardley. She's a councillor for the hamlet of Zaman City in northern Alberta.
Everything comes by mail, from food to pharmacy, and, losing that service since November 15th has been a real shakeup for our community and communities surrounding us.
The Industrial Relations Board has ordered 55,000 postal workers back on the job. Their contract is still being negotiated for now. They will get a 5% raise. Canadians could see some relief when they fill their shopping carts this holiday season. After years of rising food prices, the cost of many ingredients has stabilized. As Paula DeHatchik tells us, that could mean a break on one big-ticket item that is usually gobbled up this time of year.
It's a bit of a good news, bad news situation.
University of Guelph professor Mike Von Masso weighing in on the cost of hosting a turkey dinner. CBC News used federal retail data to analyze the cost of cooking a holiday meal after 5 years of rising prices. Making a batch of sugar cookies, for example, is about 38% more than it was in 2019. Mashed potatoes up 31%. Still, as food inflation has eased, prices have started to stabilize.
The good news is prices haven't gone up again. The bad news is they haven't come down a bunch. So we're still feeling the pressure.
While prices have gone up, Statistics Canada data shows that the median hourly wage in Canada has also climbed by about 24% in the last 5 years. Oh, and about the turkey.
I'm hoping that people enjoy turkey for Christmas dinner this year because our expectation is that prices will be a bit lower.
Agricultural economist Ellen Goddard says the threat of avian flu has largely passed, which means there should be more turkeys available. She says demand also seems to be trending lower in North America. Shoppers squeezed by the higher cost of living might be avoiding the turkey section altogether.
Whole turkeys can be in the $30 range, and that can seem very expensive when you're at the grocery store.
This week, Statistics Canada will release its latest inflation numbers, giving us yet another view of how food prices are shifting ahead of the holidays. Paula DeHatchik, CBC News, Calgary.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Most read story at cbcnews.ca. Alex Panetta talking about Trump talking trash. Some analysis there for you on that story. cbcnews.ca on our main page. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are with Information Radio on CBC. This is your morning show, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, on YouTube, 7:10 AM, Tuesday. Lots going on. The weather's not as eventful as yesterday. That's good news. We'll get your forecast on in a second here. We do have bus cancellations in 2 divisions. I'll talk about that also in just a moment. This hour, we have an I-Team investigation to share, though. It's about a Manitoba woman who's been ordered by a judge to repay tens of thousands of dollars that she took from a dead woman's estate, while the victim's family say that this should serve as a warning for the public. So we'll get the details from Caroline Bargut of the I-Team. She'll be in studio. Also, Canada Post workers back on the job this morning. We asked Manitobans what you've been waiting for in the mail. And we're going to talk to the Winnipegger who made it to the Final Five on Survivor this season before she was voted off the island this week. So if you're a fan of that show, stay tuned. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells in our news department with other news stories and updates on headlines.
Good morning. Well, another threat means another day when Elmwood High School is closed. Winnipeg School Division confirms the school will be closed at least for this morning after a threat came in last night. Yesterday, you may recall, a threat shut down both Elmwood and Oak Park High Schools. So we'll hear from the superintendent at Winnipeg School Division coming up. And a Manitoba woman says she's scared to get any more health care in Manitoba. 61-year-old Roseanne Milburn is trying to cope with phantom pain after having her right leg amputated above the knee. Her health deteriorated after she spent days in hospital with an open wound following knee replacement surgery. We'll hear more coming up in our next news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
It's time now to mention those school divisions. So there's only 2 this morning affected. We have no buses in Mountain View School Division, and there's no buses in the Brandon School Division rural areas. All of the schools are open, though. So travel, be careful if you are out there traveling anyway. Just check 511 before you leave, because obviously it's been a little bit slick out there. We did get a call. I'll just slide right into traffic here. Corey's off today. So Dan on a bike called us and said that it's mild out there if you are active commuting, if you're on your bike, but the rapid transit corridors and bike paths have not been plowed. So that is obviously tricky and slippery as well. So he's waiting on the city to do something for that to get people around. And yeah, we have lots of leftover snow out there. If you're walking, you're going to be trudging through it as well. 788-3093, though, if you have something to mention to us. I sure do like, Abby, seeing I have to admit, I like seeing the barricades starting to crumble and now be shoveled away at Portage and Main. It's kind of just from a purely, this is my personal opinion, just from a purely Winnipeg point of view, it's just there's something nice about it. Just visually watching them come down is it's interesting. I didn't think it would change the intersection that much, but it does kind of change the intersection already.
And a lot of people have been talking about that, just seeing how the transformation is happening, like, oh, wow, this is happening. Like, yeah, I've been noticing that also.
I keep saving the pictures that I see on people's social media threads because I want to have this as history when I get older, you know what I mean, to show people, oh, this is when the barricades came down. All right, let's get into the weather forecast.
I'll just pick up from the traffic and the snow you talked about. I was looking at traffic down south to the Emerson border, and you mentioned 511. I did my refresh, and I was checking the plows, and it looks like they're really busy on the 75 at this point. I see them already in the St. Pierre area, Morris, Albany. They're already really clearing up the snow in that area. So if you're going to be commuting down that route, you might be seeing those plows there. And please be careful around them. Let them do their thing. Talking about weather now, it's more like a cold day with cloudy conditions and light snow in the forecast in some of the regions. But Winnipeg right now, we're seeing light snow at the airports. We're going to stay at -9 for most of the day. And then we'll see there's a chance of light snow to stay with us for most of the day. That wind will be coming from the northwest, and then it's going to be light by the afternoon period. But the wind chill is going to make it feel colder this morning. So if you're making a transition from one bus to another, just be prepared for that. Do you see anything in traffic? Let us know. 788-3093.
Well, Winnipeggers tend to be known for our grit and our toughness. I'm going to make this radio friendly, but there's those shirts out there that even say, "Lady, I'm from Winnipeg." It's that whole "don't mess with me" vibe. Well, one Winnipegger had the chance to prove that on an international stage. Well, you likely recognize that theme by now. That's Survivor. It's been on for years. Winnipeg lawyer Genevieve Mushaluk got to spend nearly a month roughing it in Fiji while the world watched. She played hard for nearly a month on the TV reality show long-standing series Survivor. She did beat 13 other contestants, and you have to be physical in this, and you also have to mentally be cunning and scheming. But then ultimately she got out-schemed. She was voted out. There were just 5 left, and she almost made the finale. I spoke with her yesterday.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. So we had all of Winnipeg watching. What was it like for you getting so close to the final?
Oh, wow. I could smell the million, I was so close, and I thought at least I just want a chance to plead my case. But, watching it back, I see why they thought I was a big threat. I never felt like it out there. I was always, insecure about my position, but it was neat. I'm still proud of my placement, even though it's 5th instead of 1st.
What was it like for you going through this? Because, if you watch back your video going into it, right, I'm wondering how you feel now. Because when you went into this, you were like, well, I'm not a good liar. Maybe I'll make it to day 4. I don't know. I'll keep it to myself that I'm a lawyer. How have you changed?
Well, I still don't think I'm that good of a liar. It takes a toll on you. You can, of course, any adult, I think, can execute sort of a scene of deception, but it really is one of the things I didn't appreciate as a viewer. It is a long period of time to sustain your lie. And that can be really draining, like mentally, emotionally, as you're living around people. So it's tough to keep your poker face for 24 days like I did, but no regrets. It's such a fun experience.
What was the most challenging thing physically about being on Survivor?
I think the food deprivation, which really isn't a central theme of the show. It just sort of happens in the background. All of that is real. I get asked, did they give you food or their washrooms? No and no. So being so hungry all the time, you feel it in the challenges. You feel it in the heat. You feel it with the mental fog. You feel it with the irritability. At least I do. I get irritable when I'm hungry, right? So that was a persistent challenge.
Some of the things that happen also that, in life would never happen are, the very real deceptions. You had friends like Sam, and you had this whole fake idol thing scheme that didn't play out well. And then you got, turned on and, you were out. How do you separate that? You almost have to separate what you went through in the game when you come back to your relationships.
You know what? It was super easy for me to compartmentalize the game versus the personal side of it, because I can very clearly understand that there's only $1 million check and everyone wants to bring it home to their family just as much as I do. So even as Sam was explaining to me sort of the day I went home, and apologizing profusely and saying, I had to do this to give myself the best shot in the game. My response was, of course I'm disappointed for myself, but you have to do what you have to do. And there is not a drop of bad blood here. So I think if you're going to sign up to play Survivor, you really have to be able to separate that and not hold it against people, because, what are they supposed to do? Write you the $1 million check and not go home to their family with it, right? I think all is fair in love and war and Survivor.
Obviously, Genevieve, that in the past, other players' lives have changed pretty significantly after being on Survivor, especially considering how far you went. What are you expecting on that front now?
I hope my life doesn't change. I love my regular life. I think I'm one of the few on the cast who still has their social media private. And I just, I do my 9 to 5 thing and then hang out with my parents and my husband and my friends. And I like regular life. I'm not built for anything more than that, I don't think.
What's the most surprising thing? Obviously, you were a fan of the show before you ended up becoming a contestant. So you alluded sort of to the food deprivation, which isn't central to the show, but that was a surprise. What else was surprising, going through the experience of being a contestant?
Oh, good question. There's so much that I felt unprepared for, even as a viewer. I would say the having to reconcile your feelings of vulnerability and loneliness while also, not transferring that or wearing down your fellow, castmates or contestants because everyone else is feeling it. So the challenge that you would have seen on the show for me is, do you open up and let these people in, sort of emotionally build bonds, or do you keep it very clearly compartmentalized, like I was explaining, so that it makes it easier to play the game? I think that challenge was something I hadn't cracked the code for before going out there. And I think even on day 24, as I was leaving the game, I still hadn't figured out exactly how to balance that.
Why did you want to be a contestant in the first place?
I watched the show since it started airing, so even as a young woman, and I would watch and think, wow, like these, otherwise ordinary people are out there doing extraordinary things. I mean, it's an experience that money can't buy. Of course, you can go camping, but you're never going to have that type of environment with all of the challenges and the competition aspect to such a heightened degree for $1 million, right? So it was something that always was enticing to me. And then as I grew older, I never lost that feeling of, I think I could do it. And I wanted to try. So I applied for years and years and eventually got on. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't do it in the sense that I didn't win the million, but I could do it in the sense that I survived more than 1 minute out there.
Well, from the heat and the water and the challenge to the back to Winnipeg with our cold temperatures. So none of our climate helped you in this, by the way, obviously. Where are you going to watch the finale? What's your plan to watch the rest?
You know what? I am actually going to LA tomorrow so I can join the rest of my cast and watch the finale episode with them in LA.
Amazing. Enjoy it. Thanks for repping us. Woohoo!
Thank you so much. And thank you for chatting with me and letting me share a bit about my experience.
And Winnipegger, Genevieve Musheluk. And so we'll see what happens the rest of the way if you're a fan of that show. It is in Winnipeg, -9. We don't have the same snowfall to survive this morning. Today we do have some light snow falling, though, and we're going to be around -9 for most of the day. They are plowing on 75. If you're out and about on a bike, it's a little bit slippery and a little bit, lots of snow accumulation. So we did get some early calls about that. But otherwise, traffic so far so good so early. I shouldn't say so early, 7:22, we're getting into it, but still no major incidents to report, which is good. 788-3093 if you do want to reach us. We have sports coming up in a few minutes, but first a little bit of music. It's the time of year when those best of lists start to surface, and a Canadian tops a prestigious one in the music industry. Pitchfork is the online music magazine, and or one of them. It's named Cindy Lee's Diamond Jubilee as the best album of 2024. So Cindy Lee is a drag queen alter ego of Patrick Flegel, who's originally from Calgary. And from Diamond Jubilee, this is Cindy Lee, and the tune's called Dreams of You.
You're never coming back again. You lost the world, I lost my friend. I never thought to say goodbye. If I could be with you tonight. Dreams of you. Vision of doom. Dreams of you. Vision of doom. Whistle songs round your bed. Under the moonlight of breath.
So this is Cindy Lee and Dreams of You from the album Diamond Jubilee. We're sharing it this morning because it has topped online music magazine Pitchfork's list of the best albums of 2024, if you want to check it out. It is time to move to morning sports and talk about hockey with Scott Regehr. How you doing?
Good. That was a good song. I have no idea how to describe it.
Ethereal?
Very unique. Ethereal, yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Ooh, maybe? I don't know. For me. Cool, right? Yeah. I wonder if the whole album's like that. I'm not sure. Jets back in action tonight against the San Jose Sharks. What are you thinking about this one?
Well, on paper, it's a mismatch. San Jose, Marcy, is in the midst of a rebuild. They're near the bottom of the standings. They really struggle to keep the puck out of their own net. And then you have the Jets, who are atop the standings and atop the league's goal-scoring ledger. So, games obviously not played on paper, and the Sharks do boast the number one pick from last year's draft. That's Macklin Celebrini. He's second amongst rookies in both goal and point scoring. Now, when the Jets take to the ice tonight, Marcy, they're going to have some extra support in the stands. It is the team's annual Mentors trip. This year, it's the moms and sisters going along. Winger Cole Perfetti was asked how he broke the news to his mom about this trip.
I think somehow she found out before I even knew concrete. I had mentioned it to her, like, I think we're going to do a mom's trip. It's not 100%, but I kind of heard that we might be. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, she heard somehow that we were doing it. So she was super excited. And, you know, my mom put a lot into this. So now being able to celebrate it comes full circle. It's pretty special to, you know, share this trip with her. We're pretty spoiled, so it's nice to, you know, spoil her too.
You know, as trips go, this is the one to go on. I mean, they're in the San Francisco area tonight, and then they head down to Anaheim. Maybe a side trip to Disneyland. I think it might work well. But puck drop for the game tonight, 9:30.
Well, close but no cigar for the Raptors.
Right. How many times have we said that this year?
A lot.
Toronto fell by a single point to Chicago last night, which isn't bad, Marcy, considering they were behind by 16 at one juncture of the fourth quarter. Canadian R.J. Barrett, as he's done many times this season, led the team in scoring. He had 32 points, although there were other encouraging performances, namely rookie guard Jamal Shed. He played just 12 minutes and managed 10 points in that time, including a three-pointer at the buzzer, and then he spoke to reporters.
Today was kind of a weird night for us. Everybody kind of seemed a little fatigued and, you know, on both sides. It was just like a dull night. And, you know, I thought, you know, with him putting me in, you know, I know what he wanted from me, and I was just trying to be a little spark. I wouldn't say it's anything that I do. I think it's just, you know, my positive vibes and, you know, just my demeanor. You know, when we step on the court, it's just all about go.
Shed, who was a second-round draft pick this year, Marcy, is a guy Toronto hopes will be their next Fred Van Vliet. Like the former Raptor guard, Shed is short by NBA standards. He's just 6 feet tall. And like Van Vliet, he does a bit of everything. He fights through screens, he intercepts passes, and he battles in the post through a forest of much taller players. He also wears number 23, which is Fred's old number, so we'll see. In this season of rebuilding, the Raptors are showing more promise for the future, and that's good because the present's pretty bleak. 7 wins in 27 games so far.
I love Fred. I love watching him play. I like a low-to-the-ground player, though, right? Like that toughness and that get your shoulders into the defense.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah,
Me
I love
too.
that. All right, let's finish with darts, actually. The World Championships are underway in England.
Yeah, and one of the favorites to win is a 17-year-old Brit named Luke Littler. A couple of years ago, Marcy, nobody knew who he was. But then the teenager, who still lives at home with his parents, took the world by storm, made it all the way to the finals. He did it while looking completely unfussed and while employing a strict daily regimen.
I had scrambled eggs, beans on toast, and then we go to the venue, sign everyone in, get the wristbands on, have my margarita pizza, play a bit of Football Manager, and then back on the board.
With that approach, he's risen to number 4 in the world rankings. He is, on Google, the most searched athlete in Great Britain of 2024, third most searched behind Kate Middleton and Donald Trump. So good luck to Luke the Nuke Littler, as he's known.
All right, thanks, Scott.
You bet.
That's Scott Ricker in Morning Sports. No buses running today, by the way, in Mountain View School Division, and no rural buses in the Brandon School Division. And two quick notes from the road. Got a call from Richard during sports there. Highway 59, southbound Birds Hill, icy and slick. He's dropped his speed to about 59 kilometers per hour. Also, Brandon to Winnipeg is a little, and Brandon to Austin, a little bit challenging. Some wind, like two small spicy spots is how Jeff worded this. So take it easy out there. Check the highways before you go, just in case. 788-3093. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is still -9, and that's where we'll be all day. -9 is the high, a seasonal day, and it's the last one because we are going to get cold overnight tonight, and -20 is as good as it gets tomorrow. A Manitoba family alleges a woman stole $170,000 from their dead aunt. Donna Manning was 82 when she died in 2015. Her friend, Kathy Penner, was named executor of her estate. But when the family finally got access to Donna's accounts, they allege Penner had spent tens of thousands of dollars of their aunt's money and charged it to the estate. Glenda Manning is Donna's niece.
It makes you really not trust a lot, because that somebody could do that to an elderly woman.
The family sued Penner, who did not show up in court to defend herself. They were awarded a $240,000 default judgment. Winnipeg police investigated, but the Crown would not authorize charges. The family now has to find out where Penner banks in order to recoup some of what they're owed. Penner said in an affidavit she helped Donna Manning, and any money she got, Donna wanted her to have. You can hear more on this story from the CBC's I-Team in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. Well, for a second morning in a row, there are no classes at Elmwood High School because of a threat. Another threat posted online last night. Now, yesterday, both Elmwood and Oak Park High in Pembina Trails School Division were closed because of an email threat. Oak Park is open again today. Now, Elmwood was reopened to staff in the afternoon after being given the all-clear by police. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson says police were called last night when they saw the other post. He says, out of an abundance of caution, Elmwood is closed this morning and describes the threat as sinister and upsetting.
Frustration. Many people in our community are upset about this, families, parents, because enough's enough. The schools, in particular Elmwood, are so important to community. And we have people engaging in this type of activity that is harmful, it's destructive, and it needs to stop.
And we have just learned from Matt Henderson, Elmwood High School will be open this afternoon after police determined there was no threat. Well, today is the final day of the fall session on Parliament Hill, and while Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces a new round of calls to step down, it appears he has no plans to walk away.
There is no place I'd rather be than Canada, and it is the absolute privilege of my life to serve as your Prime Minister.
Trudeau last night at a Liberal fundraiser. Now, 2 cabinet ministers resigned yesterday, including his finance minister, Chrystia Freeland. She was supposed to deliver the government's fall economic update in the House. The opposition is calling for Trudeau's resignation. U.S. President Donald Trump is commenting on Chrystia Freeland's resignation. On social media, Trump calls Freeland's behavior toxic and not conducive to making deals. During the first Trump administration, Freeland was the lead minister for all cross-border issues and played a key role in renegotiating NAFTA. Manitoba's PC opposition says it is worried the projected deficit in this province is on the rise while Manitoba faces an economic threat from the United States. The NDP government has announced the projected deficit is up $513 million. Finance Minister Adrian Salas says Manitoba could finish the fiscal year $1.3 billion in the red. PC MLA Lauren Stone says that could make the province less capable of withstanding the fallout from a proposed 25% tariff on Canadian goods exported to the United States.
This is why this fiscal update is so concerning to Manitobans, because if and when those tariffs do hit, that is going to be absolutely devastating for Manitoba's economy.
President-elect Trump proposed the tariffs unless Canada strengthens the border to stop the flow of migrants and fentanyl. A Manitoba woman is trying to cope with phantom pain after having her right leg amputated above the knee. 61-year-old Roseanne Milburn's health deteriorated after spending days in hospital with an open wound following knee replacement surgery. That led to a second infection and then the amputation on Friday. Milburn doesn't know how much longer she'll be in hospital. She needs weeks of rehabilitation.
I'm scared to get any more health care in Manitoba. It scares the hell out of me. That's why I'll never do another surgery unless it's life-threatening. That's all. My quality of life can go down, but at least I'll be alive.
Milburn knows she will not be home for Christmas. And a Winnipeg business owner is relieved Striking Canada Post employees will be back on the job today. Narissa Manzano co-owns the Locals on Sherbrooke. Her store sells locally made products. She says the strike disrupted her business.
It really hit us because a lot of the local makers do rely on Canada Post. And of course, with letter mail, nobody really else gives a good rate than Canada Post with letter mail. So that also affected us as well as our makers.
The Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered the Canada Post employees back on the job today. The post office says it will take some time to clear the backlog of packages. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
This half hour, we're going to hear what you're waiting for in the mail, by the way. So today's the day where that service is restored. Let's get into a couple of things that affect schools. So no buses today in Mountain View School Division and no buses today in Brandon School Division's rural area. So outside the city of Brandon, no buses will run. Otherwise, in traffic, Corey's off today, so I'm just going to cover this before we turn to the weather. Highway 59, as I mentioned, going into the news, southbound Birds Hill, icy and slick. So you're going to need to slow down there. Pay attention. Also, number 1, Brandon to Winnipeg and also Brandon to Austin. Good conditions with a little wind. 1 or 2 small spicy spots, but good on the whole. I love that language. That is Jeff writing into us from Westman. He was curious about Austin to Winnipeg, and if you have specific information, you've been driving on it this morning already, you can update that for us or other areas. 788-3093. But obviously, we just mentioned at this time of year, always check 511 before you're heading out. And in the city, and on Highway 75, still outside the city, Highway 75, still watch for those snowplows. And in the city of Winnipeg as well, just note that obviously a lot of snow is down. If you're active commuting, you're going to be trudging through it with your bike, and also if you're walking as well. Not on the main routes. They're actually pretty clear already, but on those side streets. Okay, Abby's turn now with the regional forecast. Hello.
Yeah, we still have snow on the ground, and partly, we should see some snow, maybe just a chance of light snow for most of the regions today, but the main menu would be cloudy conditions and cold temperatures in most of the regions. Winnipeg at this point, -9. We're seeing light snow at the airport. The forecast for surrounding areas around Winnipeg would be mainly cloudy with a slight chance of light snow in the forecast, and winds will be coming from the northwest, which will ease to light as you get to the afternoon period. The highs were just around those -9 for the day. In the south central parts, the Interlake, the Red River Valley, and the Pembina Valley regions, we're looking at this mainly cloudy weather with a slim chance of light snow and light breeze from the northwest. We're seeing temperatures around -9 and -10. If we look at our conditions in western Manitoba and the Parkland region, we're anticipating cloudy skies this morning, light snow tapering off. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds in those regions. Temperatures around -8. For the Pamphlet Flown, temperatures looking around -14 for this time. Cloudy conditions, you will see slim chance of light snow in the forecast. Breezy conditions will shift northwest later. And then for Thompson and Churchill, temperatures at -17 and -22 respectively. But the main play there is the wind chill, because we're going to be having this period of light snow throughout the day, and the winds will be something to take into consideration. But right now, it's just -9 in Winnipeg. If you see anything in traffic, 788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, let's build on that story that Heather had in the news, and we also have been following it here on the show about the decision that Roseanne Milburn faced and had to ultimately decide. If you're faced with life-altering surgery, then, if you're listening, maybe you've been through this. For most of us, though, who haven't, it's unimaginable. But after a lengthy deliberation, Milburn did decide that she would have her leg amputated. This happened last Friday. She went through a leg amputation to remove an incurable infection from her knee. Now, it developed after she was left for 8 days in hospital with an open wound following knee surgery, she says. CBC's Ian Frey spoke with Roseanne Milburn after the amputation, and here is how she explained how she came to this decision.
Still living this hell day by day, hour by hour, not knowing anything, when I'm going to be moved, where I'm going to be moved. Because I've always been very independent, especially being a military wife. You have to be to survive. So I'm not used to anyone doing anything for me. I'm the matriarch of the family. I take care of the family, and now it's really hard to have them take care of me. It's hard to accept because I'm the one that's supposed to be taking care of them. Well, they asked me if I still wanted to go ahead with it, and I said, what are the other options? And they said, well, many surgeries, and in the end, you may lose your leg anyway. And I am in the 1 to 3% to get rare diseases. And I said, and I'll still have an infection for the rest of my life. Yes. So the only choice, I said, so the only way to get rid of the infection is to cut it out. And they said yes. And I said, well, then that's what we have to do, because if I need a future surgery, I'm already in the 1 to 3%. If I need another surgery, I'm already going in with an infection, which they told me would complicate future surgeries with it, living with his infection. So there is no choice to me. Nope, don't regret it. Don't like it because it's very painful. The nerve, the phantom pains are unreal. You still feel like your leg's there, you still feel like your foot's there, but it's numb, it's pins and needles, someone's stabbing it. Depends on which way you move. Oh, no, not doing my left knee. No, thank you. Not doing it. Scooter it is. I will scooter it for next 30 years if I have to. I'm scared to get any more health care in Manitoba. It scares the hell out of me. That's why I'll never do another surgery unless it's life-threatening. That's all. My quality of life can go down, but at least I'll be alive. For my kids and my grandson. I saw the prosthetic person at the HSC. She gave me paperwork, and she's my contact person, and she said once I'm healed up, then they start with a sock that I have to wear. And you try and wear it for 30 minutes, then an hour, because it's painful to wear because you're shaping your stump for the prosthetic.
So it's quite rare for someone to share, in these early hours after something like this has happened, what it has been like. But that is exactly what Winnipegger Roseanne Milburn did. Shared her experience post-surgery with CBC reporter Ian Frey. That's part of what she had to share with Ian. We've been following this story through, and if you want to read more about it, please go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world, staying on top of stories around the globe, and connected close to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
7:45 a.m. is the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or on YouTube. And coming up after 8, it was shocking news out of Ottawa. Yesterday, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announcing her resignation from the Trudeau cabinet. But not just that. Really, she'd been told she wasn't going to be Finance Minister, and then apparently was going to deliver the address yesterday on the finances in the country, the update, the fiscal update, and then said she's not doing that. Instead, she stepped down. No one delivered it. It ended up being tabled in Ottawa. And in the aftermath of the news, Canadians across the political spectrum are certainly reacting and also wondering officially what the Prime Minister is going to say today and what will happen next. So coming up after 8, we're going to hear what two Manitobans have to say about all of this. And they are both politically affiliated, political watchers as well. So stay tuned. That's coming up after 8 o'clock on the show. Well, the other big news today, of course, is that the Postal Service is resuming. So bills, checks, Christmas cards that have been stuck in limbo are going to arrive at their destinations as operations resume at Canada Post after workers were on strike for 4 weeks. The Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered the return to work after the Canadian Union of Postal Workers and Canada Post could not come to an agreement. CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanley Vidal yesterday headed out to the Forks to find out if people are looking forward to anything in particular arriving in their mailboxes.
My name is Jody Sy. I don't think I'm waiting for anything other than we have a very bare wall of no Christmas cards this year. I don't know if I have any strong opinion about them being forced back to work. I don't know that I noticed all that much that, other than the Christmas cards, that the post was not functioning, other than everything that I order usually comes by UPS or FedEx. So we haven't been hugely impacted.
What did you do? Because obviously you couldn't send out Christmas cards.
I used it as an excuse to not have to do them this year. Yeah.
It's Brent, so B-R-E-N-T, McFarland. Well, where I work, we're just delivering mail, or people are coming to pick it up, drop off checks. It's different this time from previous mail strikes, I think. People at work don't have a lot of sympathy, I'm afraid, because you know, from what we're talking about, people, they were making $19 like 10, 15 years ago. So I understand, I guess they haven't had a raise for a while, but I'm not seeing a lot of sympathy from anybody. So, I mean, I wish them well, but yeah. If Perlator does well because they're not delivering the post, they're still making money. So, I don't know, it's interesting.
Is there anything that you've been expecting in the mail that you've been waiting on?
No.
My name is Leah. Last name is Lansard.
Are you expecting anything in the mail?
Just bills. Just bills in the mail. Otherwise, I guess, I don't know. I don't have a lot of thoughts of them going back to work because there's not really a lot that I get from Canada Post, I guess.
So how have you been managing your bills otherwise? Like you signed up for e-bill?
No, mostly just been calling the I guess agencies or whatever, whether it's credit card or Manitoba Hydro or whatever, and just finding out from them, and they'll tell you. Manitoba Hydro actually phoned everybody and said, just because Canada Post isn't delivering, you still have to pay your bill. And I thought, well, duh. But, you know.
So just a small inconvenience?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think it was worse for other people who were, say, waiting for Christmas cards, or people in the remote communities who are waiting for Christmas presents that can only be delivered by mail. I think they're the ones who have had a real hardship. But for us who are, like, you know, in the more populated parts of Canada, it was less for us. But for small communities, especially up north, it was hard for them, I think.
So that's some of the perspectives of Manitobans yesterday, Winnipeggers, that Shanley Vidal, our community reporter for CBC Manitoba, came across. She was talking to people at the Forks. She was asking, what are you waiting for in your mailbox? Canada Post service resumes this morning.
A seagull splatting sunscreen on unsuspecting kids. A hamburger proved it's tasty by growing mold.
Ew.
And a National Rifle Association president speaking to empty chairs at a fake high school. When courageous marketers become rule breakers on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
Time right now is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. No buses running this morning in Mountain View School Division or in the rural areas of the Brandon School Division. Just note that. Some light snow falling in Winnipeg, Brandon and Thompson. Our temperature in Winnipeg -9, Brandon's -8, and in Thompson quite a bit colder. It's -17. Well, coming up next on Information Radio, let's talk about the story that you may have heard part of in the news this morning. It's an I-Team investigation. It's about a Manitoba family that says a friend of their elderly aunt allegedly stole tens of thousands of dollars from her. The woman appeared to be helping the aunt who lived alone, but after the aunt died, they discovered most of the aunt's accounts were drained. The I-Team's Caroline Bargood is here to talk more about the story. Hi there.
Hi, good morning.
So, well, let's start at the beginning, I guess. Walk us through what happened.
So Donna Manning was 82 years old. She was living alone in Gimli after her partner had died a few years earlier. She had a number of health problems, and her closest relatives lived right here in Winnipeg, and they didn't realize how bad her health was getting. Now, Donna had a friend named Kathleen Penner, who also, of course, was called Kathy. Now, the two met years earlier through softball. And Kathy started taking Donna to some of her medical appointments because she lived closer than her family. And according to Kathy's court affidavit, she would stop by Donna's place about once or twice a day just to check up on her. Then in May 2015, Donna ended up in the hospital. She died a few days later. So Kathy phoned Donna's family to say that Donna had died and that she had made her the executor of the will. Now, this surprised Donna's niece, Glenda Manning, because as far as the family knew, Glenda's dad, Glenn, who was Donna's brother, was the executor of his sister's estate.
When Donna passed, Kathleen Penner phoned my dad and said, your sister has passed away, and she went very quickly. And I've been named executor, so I'll take care of everything. So my dad was kind of shocked. He didn't know what was going on. He did call the hospital to find out what happened. And there'd been an order put on at the hospital that nobody was to tell him anything.
Glenda says the family later learned that Donna had actually been in the hospital for 3 days, and they could have had a chance to say goodbye, but no one called them.
Why does the family think Donna was taken advantage of?
So Glenda Manning, who you just heard from, and her cousin Kirk McArdle, who is Donna's niece, thought that it was odd that their aunt had changed the executor of her will without telling her brother or anyone else in the family. So as time went on, they started to notice other things weren't really adding up. For example, Donna was very frugal, and she didn't spend a lot of money on herself, and she had been a bookkeeper for her entire life, and she was retired. She was meticulous about tracking her bills and paying them on time, but somehow she ended up with a $6,000 credit card bill, and she never actually ever carried a balance. Now, Glenda and Kirk say Kathy spent tens of thousands of their aunt's money.
Yeah, she ended up applying for 2 visas. She even had the gall to raise the limit 6 months after my aunt had passed on the Visa card.
I should explain that. Glenda and Kirk say that that credit card bill was actually Kathy Penner's, and that Donna had given Kathy a credit card in her name because she had been helping her out. But as far as we know, she didn't know that Kathy was using it for her own personal benefits. Now, Glenda and Kirk ended up taking Kathy to court to have her removed as the executor. They also sued her for the money that she allegedly took from the estate.
So how much money is Kathy alleged to have taken?
So Penner said that the value, this is what she told the family, that the value of Donna's estate was about $120,000. But the family thought that sounded off because it really only included the value of Donna's condo. And Donna had already won a $50,000 lottery. She had a registered savings account, and she had 2 investments that were worth over $70,000. Now, none of which Kathy had included in the inventory of Donna's accounts that she provided to the family. Now, Kathy's alleged to have spent most of the funds in the estate for her personal use, about $170,000. And she's accused of taking vacations with Donna's money. Now, Glenda and Kirk went through all the financial documents, and they learned that before Kathy became power of attorney, Donna had spent about $24,000 a year. After Kathy became power of attorney, her spending went up to $90,000 a year.
She hasn't had to answer to anything. And it's been like we're going in our 10th year. This is like, when does she have to step up and be accountable?
So they had sued her. They took her to civil court. The judge issued a default judgment against Kathy Penner for more than $240,000. Now, this included the money that she owed to the estate before and after Donna's death, plus punitive damages and interest. Now, Glenda and Kirk say they get about $800 a month. They garnished Kathy's wages. She works part-time. And at that rate, it'll take about 25 years before they get back what they're owed.
What is Kathy Penner saying?
Well, she's not saying much. We tried to contact her. She wouldn't do an interview with us. She said she was going to get a lawyer, but then she stopped responding to our questions. Now, Kathy didn't show up to defend herself in court when she was sued, but she had filed an affidavit when Kirk and Glenda were trying to have her removed as executor. Now, in this affidavit, she said that thousands of dollars worth of charges that were used after Donna had died were actually related to administering the estate. For example, she said that, the gas that was spent was because she was traveling to and from Donna's condo. She had bought some equipment, some golf equipment, and that's because Donna wanted her to buy it to donate it. And that she said, food purchases that she had made were basically dinners that she and other people had taken and were talking about Donna. Garrett Tooley is an estate lawyer.
Personal expenses of the executor are only going to be fair and reasonable if they go towards the administration of the estate. So if it's buying groceries for themselves, it will not be reasonable. If it's taking a trip to scatter ashes, that might be something that would be something that's reasonable if you're following the wishes of the deceased.
He says it's really important for families to talk to loved ones, especially elderly loved ones, so that they know what their wishes are, so that when they die, there's no confusion about what they want.
What else is the family concerned about here?
So once Kathy was removed as executor, Glenda and Kirk now had access to all of her financial records. And they say that they discovered that Kathy's neighbor, Penny McAdam, had sold Donna 2 investments that were worth $70,000. Now, Penny's a financial advisor. And when Donna died, Penny received $20,000 as the beneficiary of one of these investments, while Kathy got $50,000 because she was the beneficiary of the other investment. Now, both women had checked off a box that said that Donna didn't have a will when she did, in fact, have a will. John Woodfield is a certified financial advisor in BC.
And this one's particularly egregious because the investment advisor was also a beneficiary and also had a friend who was a beneficiary who was the executrix. So I think even in these courses that we have to take, I haven't seen anything quite like this. It raises huge red flags.
So Penny McAdam didn't want to comment on this story. She didn't want to comment on the investment, stating that she can't discuss any client information due to privacy reasons. As for Glenda and Kirk, they had taken their case to Winnipeg Police. Police investigated and had wanted to lay charges, but the Crown would not authorize charges. They're still trying to find out where Kathy Penner keeps her money because they garnished her wages, so they get about $800 a month, but they actually have to find out where she keeps the money to garnish more of it in order to recoup any money.
Caroline, thanks for walking us through this.
Thank you.
Caroline Bargut is a reporter with CBC Manitoba's I-Team. She'll have more tonight on the CBC News at 6. You can read more on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. As the family said, they see this as a cautionary tale they hope for others. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. I have a small traffic note that I forgot to get on here, so I just want to mention, Sean, the air compressor guy, called us East Logan at the base of the Salter Bridge. There's a truck blocking the right lane. He says you could come upon it really quickly, and hopefully not, because you got to get around it. The truck is there kind of trying to fix a light standard, so you got to go around this. 788-3093 if you need us. Heather's here with headlines.
Good morning. Classes at Elmwood High School have been cancelled for a second morning because of another threat. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson says an online threat was seen last night and police were called right away. This was 1 day after Elmwood and Oak Park High Schools were both closed because of an email threat. Henderson says it's frustrating for everyone in the community. He says police investigated and have determined classes can resume this afternoon. So at Elmwood High, class will be on this afternoon. A Manitoba woman says she's scared to get any more health care in this province. 61-year-old Roseanne Milburn is trying to cope with phantom pain after having her right leg amputated above the knee. Her health deteriorated after spending days in hospital with an open wound following knee replacement surgery. We'll hear more on this story coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
-9 in Winnipeg right now. We'll be there for the day. Light snow falling in the city. Well, coming up, let's hear more about what's going on in Ottawa. We have two Manitobans on. One votes Liberal, one votes Conservative. Both of them can't take their eyes off of what might happen next after yesterday. We're going to get the latest on World Report, and then we'll have that panel conversation coming up right here on CBC's Information Radio. Stay with us. I'm Marcy Marcusa.
On Q with Tom Power.
With a career as big as hers, no wonder Cher is splitting her memoir into 2 books. Cher will be here to tell you about her early days in music and open up about the difficult relationship she had with her musical partner and ex-husband, the late Sonny Bono.
I got you,
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Concerns about kids and phones have been growing for years, but the author Jonathan Haidt brought the issue to the forefront with his blockbuster book, The Anxious Generation, and the discussion it spurred among parents, teachers, and governments. Jonathan Haidt coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The calls for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to step down are getting louder. Here is PEI MP Sean Casey.
If it was me, I'd be gone a while ago, but he has the right to be wrong. I would take more of a read of the room and accept that judgment.
Trudeau left the Liberal caucus last night, promising he would think about what members had to say. The Canadian public is still waiting to hear from him, too, after Chrystia Freeland's bombshell resignation. And as Rafi Boudjikanian tells us, today is the last day of the fall sitting of Parliament.
Le très honorable Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau still finding applause, if not with everyone in his caucus, at least among the party faithful gathered at a fundraiser Monday night.
It's obviously been an eventful day.
The Prime Minister meeting them after hearing from some of his own MPs asking for him to step down.
It is the absolute privilege of my life to serve as your Prime Minister.
Those calls from parliamentarians on the heels of an abrupt resignation by his finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, who published a letter rebuking Trudeau over their differences on the best financial path forward for Canada, just hours before she'd been set to deliver a fall economic statement, saying costly political gimmicks won't help at a time the country is facing incoming U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threat. Trudeau quickly named veteran cabinet member Dominic LeBlanc to finance as a replacement.
The government continues to focus on the work that Canadians want us to focus on.
But the political opposition is seizing on the chaos, including Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
When will we have a carbon tax elected?
And NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign.
Singh's party has been the last one to support the Liberals in this minority parliament, now warning it won't do that anymore if MPs return from their holiday break with Trudeau still at the helm next February or March. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
The new federal finance minister, Dominic LeBlanc, has one more thing to do. He is still in charge of public safety, and he told CBC's Information Morning he will unveil details of the government's border package today.
It's $1.3 billion. I'll be later today providing details with the commissioner of the RCMP and others in terms of what that will do in terms of enhancing the border security posture.
The border plan is a key part of Canada's response to Donald Trump's tariff threat. LeBlanc says the government has to be focused on preparing for the incoming U.S. administration, and it cannot do that if it is focusing inward on the party. The federal Liberals were dealt another loss overnight. They lost the by-election in the BC riding of Cloverdale-Langley City to the Conservatives. This is the third seat the governing Liberals have lost in a by-election this year. The Conservative candidate declined to speak to reporters. Statistics Canada has released its inflation report for November. It shows inflation dropped to 1.9%. That is down slightly from the 2% recorded in October. Lower mortgage costs are one of the reasons for the lower than expected consumer price index. The CBC's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
We got so used to seeing the pace of inflation move in these really big jumps that a relatively normal report like this almost feels unusual. The stuff you need, the stuff we all have to buy, came in below expectations. The price for groceries was up 2.6% year over year. The cost of gasoline actually fell 0.5% from last year. And that's great for consumers. It's important for the economy and for the Bank of Canada. But it doesn't mean overall prices aren't exceptionally high. And you would be right to say it doesn't feel like prices are up a mere 1.9% because over a longer timeline, of course, they're not. Go back to 2021. Grocery prices are now up 19.6%. Shelter prices are up 18.9%. Canadian households are still absorbing those price increases, and they'll be absorbing them for a long time after the official StatCan number hits its target. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Игорь Кириллов и его помощник. Произошедшее квалифицировано как теракт.
A member of Russia's investigative committee confirms the death of a senior general in Moscow. A bomb planted in an electric scooter was triggered outside a residential building earlier today. Officials say Igor Kirillov and his assistant were killed. Kirillov was the head of Russia's nuclear defense forces. Several countries had issued sanctions against him, including Canada. Ukraine Security Services says it was behind the assassination. Yesterday, that same agency charged Kirillov with war crimes. It says he was behind the use of chemical weapons in Russia's war against Ukraine. The head of Syria's opposition alliance is laying out his plan for the country's security. Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, whose real name is Ahmed al-Shara, says rebel forces will be disbanded and trained to join the ranks of the defense ministry. It's been more than a week since President Bashar al-Assad was overthrown. Many Syrians are wondering what comes next. Our senior international correspondent Margaret Evans reports.
Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, the Islamist leader of the rebel alliance, has pledged to protect all of Syria's religious and ethnic groups, including Alawites, the minority sect to which the deposed president Bashar al-Assad belongs. Al-Jolani has assigned envoys or spoken himself to minority groups, telling them they've nothing to fear. Tal al-Shamis, assistant pastor at an evangelical church in Damascus, says parish leaders were invited to a meeting. They were told all the Christians could follow their religion freely, he says, that there would be no change. Not everyone is convinced. Many Shia Muslims have or are trying to flee Syria out of fear of persecution. Members of the Alawite community who haven't already fled are laying very low, fearing they'll be associated with al-Assad's brutal rule. Majid Makhaiber sent his own sons out of Damascus to the Alawite stronghold of Tartus. He calls it a precaution. For years, people lived in fear that if this government fell, they would be in danger. I don't believe that, he says. I think there are a few cases, but that the Syrian people are rebuilding themselves and will bring sects together. Al-Jolani's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a former al-Qaeda affiliate, is listed as a terrorist group by several foreign governments, including Canada. Removing it from the list, say many, will depend on whether or not al-Jolani keeps his pledges. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Damascus.
Bumper-to-bumper traffic in New Delhi is worse under smog that has been constant for weeks. India's government is tightening restrictions. The air quality is at severe levels again. In New Delhi Tuesday morning, the air quality index reached 424 on a scale of 500. People are being told to stay indoors as much as possible. Christmas is just over a week away, but it does not feel like it in many parts of the country. Temperatures are above zero. Canadians are not getting the conditions for the activities some people enjoy at this time of year. And your report says climate change is to blame. Anand Ram has more.
That's Joel Campbell's boot depressing into soft, muddy soil in a West End Toronto park. Not ideal, given he's setting up an ice rink, something he's done here every year for the last decade.
And on a day like today, I mean, it's warm. It's not really a good day to flood.
No, not a good day to flood today, but this is
starting to seem a little more typical.
He's talking about the lack of freezing cold, and a new analysis from the nonprofit Climate Central says across Canada, climate change has made above zero days in winter far more common. Christina Dahl is the group's vice president of science.
Our economies depend on having freezing temperatures. Our ecosystems depend on having freezing temperatures. And in many parts of the world, our water supplies depend on it as well.
The analysis found that from 2014 to last year, dozens of Canadian towns and cities have added a week's worth of above zero temperatures to their winter, Montreal and Calgary among them. In Toronto, it's more, almost 2 weeks. And in Metro Vancouver, the last decade has seen almost 3 whole weeks of days above zero during winter. To be clear, the weather may still give us scenes of kids tobogganing down snowy hills, but as the climate warms from humans burning fossil fuels, experts say the chances of warmer, wetter winters are higher. For Campbell, even if the days are few and far between, it's still worth setting up this rink.
If we can get it open for even part of the holidays, is just a huge benefit for the whole neighborhood.
After all, it's where he taught his 3 daughters how to skate. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to CBC Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or maybe on YouTube this morning. And we have a lot to talk about. You thought I was going to talk about weather, right? Yesterday, that was the Manitoba story. Today, weather's pretty calm, stabilized. Today, we're going to talk politics. You're writing in about your thoughts as you watched what unfolded yesterday with the Liberal Party in this country. So it was shocking news out of Ottawa. First, it started with Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announcing her resignation from the Trudeau cabinet, then learning that she had been demoted and she was expected to give the fiscal update. She did not stand. No one stood to give the fiscal update. They tabled it instead. In the aftermath of the news, Canadians across the political spectrum are reacting and asking this morning, what's the Prime Minister going to do today? We have yet to officially hear from Justin Trudeau, just some comments made at a charitable dinner last night. And so we have 2 Manitobans in studio with us who are going to go through what their thoughts are on what was a historic day. I mean, we really can't underscore that enough, a historic day in this country for what happened. And so we'll have some discussions about all of that and their concerns as Manitobans and also moving forward where they think things are going to move to. 8:11 is the time right now. And I also want to mention that we'll get some comments on the air because you've been writing to us on Facebook this morning. And if you do want to join the conversation and call, it's 788-3205. Heather Wells is in with updates on other stories this morning. What are you working on in the newsroom, Heather?
Good morning. Yes. Well, a Manitoba family alleges a woman stole $170,000 from their dead aunt. Donna Manning was 82 when she died in 2015. Her friend Kathy Penner was named executor of her estate. But when the family finally got access to Donna's accounts, they allege Penner had spent tens of thousands of their aunt's money and then charged it to the estate. So we'll hear more. That's from our I-team. And that story's coming up in our next news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In the traffic situation first, I just want to mention one last time. I'm sure you know this by now, but Mountain View School Division, no buses are running today. That's because of poor rural road conditions. Brandon School Division isn't operating outside of the city of Brandon with buses either. But to be clear, all of the schools are open. It's just that the bus service is not happening. In addition, in traffic in the city of Winnipeg, we have Sean who called saying eastbound Logan at the base of the Salter Bridge. There's a truck blocking a lane there. You could come upon it quick, and so be careful with that. Also from the highways, Brandon to Winnipeg and Brandon to Austin, good, little bit of wind, one or two icy patches there. We got a call from Jeff. And then Highway 59 southbound Birds Hill, icy, slick. Richard called and said he was having to slow his speeds down to about 60K. And just one final note, I guess 2. One of them is we got people calling that are biking this morning. They're saying the main routes look fine, but if you're off on the bike paths, they're not plowed. So they're slippery, not plowed, and challenging. And then, of course, just a reminder to watch for plows that might be out there. So there has been some equipment spotted on Highway 75. So traffic line's been busy, but everything's much calmer warmer than yesterday for sure.
Yeah.
You can update us if you want. 788-3093. That's Abby saying yep, because you're the one that has to answer the phone in there.
Yep, and those plows have really been busy on the Highway 175, 59. They are busy, so if you're commuting on those highways this morning, please take it easy and give them some time to do their thing. Let's talk about weather now. We're going to see cold temperatures, cloudy conditions. There's a slight chance of light snow in the forecast in some of the regions today, so look out for that. But for Winnipeg, we are still stuck at -9. We'll be there for most of the day. We will see mainly cloudy skies. We do have a slight chance of light snow in the forecast for the city this morning, though we spotted light snow at the airports already. The winds will be light, easing through the afternoon, and then we'll just stay around -9. Though the wind chill is going to make it feel colder this morning, and then for tonight, it's going to remain mainly cloudy, and that slight of chance of snow is still going to stay with us as it clears overnight. Then tomorrow we'll see some sunny conditions. Similar condition in the South Central, Interlake, Red River Valley, Pimlico Valley regions. We're seeing similar cloudy weather and that slim chance of shower. But up north, we're seeing more like cold temperatures and periods of snow, which will transition to a mix of sun and clouds later. Overall, cold temperatures and cloudy skies in the forecast for today. Winnipeg is just going to stay around -9 all day. You see anything in traffic? Please give us a call, 788-3093.
So as I mentioned, we asked on Facebook, watching what was unfolding in Ottawa yesterday, still waiting for answers this morning. We're asking what you're thinking as a Manitoban in the aftermath of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland's resignation. That question's on top of mind for many right now. So here's what some have been writing. Rick Koss wrote in, long past time that Canada adopted some form of a 2-term limit for prime ministers. We have Diane Poulin writing in, I think Freeland will instigate another revolt against Trudeau and go for the Liberal leadership. Chris Brandon writing, if you're in power long enough, that power goes to your head, as Freeland herself said in her resignation letter, and I'm paraphrasing, Canadians know when you're working for them and when you're working for yourself. And Trudeau has become very much a one-man show, much like Stephen Harper was, and eventually it led to his demise as well. And so that's part of the statement here. Well, let's get into a bigger conversation about all of this from a Manitoba perspective. Yesterday, as you know, Chrystia Freeland took to social media to announce her departure from Trudeau's cabinet. It came hours before she was supposed to deliver that fall fiscal update. And that letter that she left behind really made no bones about it. It was one of the most strongly worded letters that I think many people have ever seen in terms of Canadian politics. And she made no bones about using words like gimmicks when she talked about some of the methods that Trudeau was supporting moving forward fiscally. So Winnipeg Liberal Hannah Mahaichuk-Marshall is with us. We spent many an election night together, but we've got lots to talk about today. Hi.
Hi, Marcy. I'm glad to be here under the circumstances. You know, a lot's going on in these busy holiday season, and we're all focused on Ottawa.
Yeah, right, aren't we? Now, the Conservative Michael Prisbell is also here. He's been following the news of Freeland's departure closely. Hello there.
Good morning.
So each of you, what's one word to describe, you know, from your Manitoba, your Canadian perspective here, what you watched unfold yesterday?
For me, it was quite shocking. It seemed like they were kind of leading about it with Steve or Mark Carney in the summer. So it seemed like it was a bit of a precursor. So I feel like it was coming. It was just surprising to actually see it unfold.
In that way. And how about for you, Hannah? What were you thinking? What was a word you would describe?
I think my word would be consequential. I think as much as happened yesterday, I think the most important things are still to come. And I can imagine that today and in the coming weeks and months, we are going to see the impacts of this and maybe a coming to head of the political climate of this country as it stands, as it has stood for about a year and a half. I think this is the point.
So we have yet to hear officially from the Prime Minister this morning. What are your thoughts and what are you waiting to hear from him, Michael?
In terms of him, I assume that he is going to be making the fall economic decision or the update. I think he's going to be the one that talks about it. There's nobody else qualified.
They put Dominic LeBlanc in there right now, but you're saying he's going to be the one that's going to have to wear whatever those decisions are that come out of the statement.
Correct.
Yeah.
An additional $20 billion spending. I mean, she set her own guardrail of $40 billion. And I think that the Prime Minister wanted to push her in order to get her to spend even more money. And I think that's where she threw her hat in and said, I'm done. My guardrail was $40 billion. I'm not willing to spend an additional $60 or $20 billion to make it $60 billion. So,
do you think the Libs are overspending, and you think that that's on him?
I agree, yes.
Are you waiting? I'm wondering about his political future and what you just not even as an analyst, just like as a Manitoban. Does he go? Do you want him to go?
He should have been gone some time ago. I think with the NDP supporting him, I think that's when it should have been the nail in the coffin. I think relying on another party shows weakness, and I think Donald Trump even trolling Justin Trudeau himself, I think that shows that sign of weakness.
So you mean the comments that he's recently made, Donald Trump, about Canada, being a state, is calling him a governor now, quote unquote, right?
Correct.
What did the Liberals do right by you as a Manitoban? And where did they? And then I'll ask where they missed the mark. But I wonder where you think they did right by you to sort of tease this out.
I'm not quite sure what to say. What they did was correct or right. I think that they have the right mindset of. I'm a new father myself too, so I think the $10 childcare I think is a good idea. I think the execution of it though was poor. It's very difficult to find slots available. It's not many of them. It's very difficult to find availability. So I think the idea is good, but the execution was poor.
Got it. And where did they miss the mark for you? You said he should have been gone long ago, but
yes.
Overall, in terms of obviously the Conservatives appeal to your life here more and
Correct.
work for you, but where have they missed it for you?
I think for myself personally, watching the House of Commons and seeing the scandal after scandal after scandal with Justin Trudeau, with the SNC-Lavalin, We Charity scandal, even currently with Randy Boissonneau, and even the Green Slush Fund, everything, all the scandals that constantly come out with the Arrive Can app, everything that just hits him and hits him and hits him and hits him is just another misstep by him.
So, Hannah, what are your thoughts on where they go next in terms of leadership? First of all,
I understand where my co-guest comes from with a lot of what he's saying. It's something that we've been hearing from Canadians for quite a while now. I would have to disagree on the point about relying on another party shows weakness. I think it's one of the cornerstones of our democracy that we have that Team Canada front that has been kind of the term to use as the incoming president of the United States. The reality of that really sets in. I think that it's going to be hard for the Prime Minister to ignore this. I think we've gotten to the point where he can no longer. It was the letter previously. I think we were going down a path as a party, and there were roads to take to get off that path. But I think we didn't. We probably missed that mark.
What do you mean there were roads to get off that path? Is that a nice way of saying Trudeau could have stepped down earlier?
No, I mean, I think there were ways to address the concerns that Canadians had broadly in terms of cost of living, having a finger on the pulse a little bit more so.
So do you think they've missed that somewhere along the way? Then they became detached from what the everyday Canadian was concerned about.
I hate to say it, but I do believe there was an element of that. I think it happens. They were very focused on some incredible policy, but at one point, to avoid the political reckoning that is happening in Ottawa right now, I do believe a redirection was needed. And even Jagmeet Singh himself, well, he didn't really say that he would be pulling support if the Prime Minister were to stay on as Prime Minister and Liberal leader, but I believe it was his House leader.
Yeah, said there's no other way forward.
And so I just don't see any way around that. I imagine we'll be seeing other members of cabinet come forward. I'm surprised we didn't see more yesterday. I think losing Freeland is a pretty big hit considering the front that we do have to put on as a country to face Trump.
I wonder, Michael, it's interesting because both of you are saying that there's a disconnection between the Liberal Party. Hannah saying it happened along the way. Different choices could have been made, tying it to cost of living choices, perhaps, with the grassroots, so to speak, the everyday. Does that resonate with you? You sort of alluded to that the Liberals have been disconnected from what you care about here as a dad, as a Manitoban?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that. The way that I feel is that I think Pierre is somebody who's a little bit more connected with Canadians in the sense of where his upbringing is from. Being an adopted child, coming from two school teachers. I think it's a stronger connection to the everyday Canadian versus Justin Trudeau and, in his father's legacy and where he comes from as a family. I think that bit of a disconnect in where you're nurtured and growed as a child and as you grow into an adult, I think that disconnect also affects you as a leader.
So for you, it's not so much about what the Liberals did or didn't do. You're looking straight at leadership and you're saying you connect to Pierre Poilievre, just knowing where he came from, knowing his background, and then you saying Justin Trudeau for you. Did you ever connect to him? Did he lose you along the way, or was he always someone you thought, no?
I think he had a little bit more of that vigor. I think he had that more of that charisma at the beginning back in 2015. And I think that's why he won. He was a young leader, and I had connected more with him when I was younger. Now, being a father myself, I'm kind of disconnecting from his values.
What about the Conservatives in terms of their policy platforms or their ideas? Do you like?
Well, I like Liberals, but they spend too much money. They have good ideas. They have good value, especially childcare. The pharmacare bill, not really a pharmacare bill. It's for diabetics and for contraceptives. So not true pharmacare bill, but I think their ideas are good. Their execution can be poor sometimes. And Conservatives come in there and balance the budget. They don't balance themselves, as Justin Trudeau likes to say. So Conservatives are necessary in order to fix the mistakes that Liberals make along the way.
What are your thoughts on where the Liberal Party goes from here ideologically, Hannah? There was some talk yesterday about moving forward. I think out of the caucus meeting, some of the MPs were reflecting, and somewhere in the analysis there was talk around moving more back toward the center. And I wonder whether or not you think this party has changed.
We have an incredibly diverse and party. We have a wide array of opinions and political leanings. It is really big tent. But I think that's something that remains no matter if it is the Prime Minister leading us or the next hopeful, is that what it is to be a Liberal is to have those good ideas, is to keep pushing Canada forward, to refuse to go back, to refuse to bow down to bullies like Donald Trump. I think no matter what, I just hope if it is a leadership review, if it is whatever, going forward, this country will be in good hands if we have that united front with the Liberal Party, because they have clear eyes on how to stand up for Canadians with things like affordability. Interest rates are going down. We're in a good economic position in terms of the other G7 countries, the cost of groceries. I heard the good news about turkeys this morning, right? Things are tough, but we need that stability. And I truly believe that a progressive government and a forward-looking government is what we need to tackle the challenges of 2025, because they're big.
In terms of the actual letter itself that Freeland wrote, what were your thoughts on how blunt she was, calling some of the fiscal decisions by the PM's office gimmicks? I mean,
Chrystia Freeland is someone I personally look up to just almost more than any other member of this party. She is incredibly strong and capable. I think she is a public servant that we should all model ourselves after. She really is incredible, and I think we're at a disadvantage without her. I think it really, outside of any kind of politicking, theater, anything like that, I think what the letter really said is that Chrystia Freeland was standing up for her convictions and doing what she thinks was best for Canadians, which is something that she always does. And it's something Trudeau does too. It's just they disagreed on what that looks like, and it's unfortunate, but I'm proud of her for standing up for herself and for Canadians.
What do you want to hear from the PM today?
I think I would like to hear some reassurance. I think there's a lot of chaos going on. There's anxiety that comes from not just politicos like myself, but all Canadians watching this. What does this mean, right? What is going on? We need that stability. And I think no matter what, separate from the politics, we need him to reassure us that we will be doing okay. We're going to be okay.
And Michael, what do you need to hear from the Prime Minister today?
That he's resigning. I think with those 24 Liberal MPs that were with that letter, I think they're going to be a little bit more outspoken today. They're going to be more Liberal MPs coming forward because they need to worry about their constituents and their job. And being attached to Justin himself right now, I think, is a position of weakness. Even with the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, resigning, that shows a huge sign. The news cycle is going to be shifted on this, and they're going into the Christmas break. This is everything that's all going to be focused on this until they come back in January. So what's he going to do? I don't know. I think he's has a few strings to pull left, but I think ultimately he will be resigning.
Well, we'll see. Where it's not even 8:30 yet, so the sun's just coming up in some parts of this country, right? Thank you both for being here. Really appreciate your early analysis. Michael, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hannah, thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
Winnipegger Hannah Mahaichuk-Marshall, Liberal campaigner. Michael Prisbell, rink attendee here in Winnipeg and a Conservative voter, but also has supported the Liberals, it sounds like, maybe in the past? Never?
Younger.
When he was younger. Okay. This morning, we're wondering what you're thinking. You can weigh in 788-3205. Thank you so much for joining us for our political panel today. Dave called while we were talking. North Perimeter, westbound Brookside is now an issue. There's inside lanes really icy. He's going 20K, he said. So you're sliding around. You know what that feels like, right? That's despite his good winter tires, he wants to point out. So it's really slick. He's seeing trucks and cars going to the ditch. So be careful, everybody. North Perimeter, westbound Brookside, really icy. Your CBC Winnipeg News. It's coming up next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is still -9 in downtown Winnipeg. We're headed to, we're going to stay there at -9, but then tonight we fall way down. -23 is the low tonight, and tomorrow a high of just -20. So enjoy this seasonal day today. A Manitoba family says their aunt's friend allegedly stole hundreds of thousands of dollars after she died. But even after getting a court judgment in their favor, they're fighting to get her to pay it back. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargout reports.
When Donna Manning died in 2015, her friend Kathy Penner was the only one by her side. She called the family to break the news and to say she'd been named executor of Donna's estate. Penner also told the family Donna didn't have very much money, which didn't make sense to her family. That's because Donna was a retired bookkeeper and had always been very frugal. They later learned that Penner had allegedly spent $170,000 of Donna's money before and after she died. Glenda Manning is Donna's niece.
She became executor because she knew that as executor, we wouldn't have access to the bank accounts. And it took us 6 years to get that access to find the proof.
The family sued Penner, who didn't show up to court to defend herself. Penner said in an affidavit she helped Donna, and any money she got, Donna wanted her to have. The family was awarded a $240,000 judgment. They garnished Penner's wages and receive about $800 a month. At that rate, it will take 25 years for the debt to be paid. Winnipeg police investigated, but the Crown wouldn't authorize charges. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Manitoba woman is trying to cope with phantom pain after having her right leg amputated above the knee. 61-year-old Roseanne Milburn's health deteriorated after spending days in hospital with an open wound following knee replacement surgery. That led to a second infection and then the amputation on Friday. Milburn doesn't know how much longer she'll be in hospital. She needs weeks of rehabilitation.
That it is sinister. I would say that it is upsetting. I would say
I'm scared to get any more health care in Manitoba. It scares the hell out of me. That's why I'll never do another surgery unless it's life-threatening. That's all. My quality of life can go down, but at least I'll be alive.
Milburn knows she won't be home for Christmas, but she hopes to move to a hospital closer to her home in Eli. Well, classes at Elmwood High School have been canceled for a second morning because of another threat. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson says an online threat was seen last night. Police were called right away. This comes one day after Elmwood and Oak Park High Schools were both closed because of email threats. Henderson says it's frustrating for everyone in the community.
That it is sinister. I would say that it is upsetting. I would say that it's harmful. Again, these types of things have to stop.
Henderson says police investigated and have determined classes can resume this afternoon. He says there's no indication there's any connection to the threat sent to Elmwood and Oak Park yesterday. Police searched both schools yesterday. A spokesperson at Pembina Trails says there have been no further threats to Oak Park and it's back to classes today. However, police will be on hand as a precaution. Canada's inflation edged lower to 1.9% in November. That is down 2% is what it was in October. Statistics Canada says shelter costs increased at a slower annual pace of 4.6%, while rent price inflation accelerated to 7.7%. Grocery prices continued to grow faster than overall prices, rising 2.6% from a year ago. Now, in this province, inflation also edging lower last month to 0.9%. Manitoba's inflation was 1.1% in October. Manitoba's finance minister is calling a new fiscal projection good news. Adrian Sala says a projected $1.3 billion deficit for the current fiscal year is positive because it's less than last year. Sala's budget, however, called for a deficit that was $513 million lower. PC Midland MLA Lauren Stone says Sala and the NDP government are mistaken.
They're saying on one hand, their progress in shrinking the deficit, but at the same time, they've increased the deficit by over $500 million. This is not good news for Manitobans.
Overspending in healthcare is the main driver of the higher projected deficit. Well, Canada Post employees head back to work today after being ordered back on the job. Winnipeg business owner Narissa Manzano says customers have been understanding about the disruption to deliveries, but the co-owner of the Locals on Sherbrooke says her bottom line took a hit. Manzano says they had to cover a lot of expenses.
Our online store is set up with Canada Post, so the rates are not really the same with other carriers. So if there was like a price difference, we kind of just covered it just to keep everyone happy.
The Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered Canada Post employees to return to work today. The post office says it will take some time to clear the backlog of mail and packages. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
So we're getting calls about the perimeter, north perimeter. Now we got called about the west perimeter. Everything's slick. Everything's icy. Have a good, safe rest of your drive, Manitoba. And thank you very much for updating our traffic line. All right, Abby, take it away.
We're looking at, sorry about that. We're looking at cold temperatures and cloudy skies across the province. Light snow in some regions, and temperatures will even get colder as you get to the northern part of the province. But for Winnipeg today, expect cloudy conditions.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
So thanks to the associate producers who specifically worked on the show today. They are Emma Fazakosh, as well as Shanley Vidal, who is our community reporter, and Chidi Akuma. Also working on the program this morning, of course, you heard from Caroline Bargout. And I'm just going through the list here. Carmen Ponto working on the program this morning as well. Our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Also, big thanks to our associate producers overall on our team. And to our live team here in our news center, Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo. To our on-air team here this morning, Abby Adiemi and Kevin Nipatepo. And thank you for listening, as always. Take care, be well, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We'll be back again tomorrow with another edition of The Morning Show Information Radio. See ya. Currents coming up next.